Test, test, test.
And do not necessarily reflect the views or positions of the sponsor, any advertisers, or the sponsor's affiliates, employees, or partners.
Coming to you live from the Claremont Lounge in Atlanta, Georgia, it's Campfire Moto Stories.
Hey everyone, welcome to Campfire Moto Stories. I'm Anthony Bennett, and I'm thrilled to have you join us today for our live show. This YouTube show / podcast is all about sharing amazing motorcycle stories from everyday riders like you. Whether it's an epic ride, a
Warning: all stories could be completely made up, and we have no way to confirm that. Any and all names mentioned in the show are most likely fake. We at Campfire Motor Stories are not journalists and should not be considered as much. If you're offended by anything said or shown in this episode, episode, we don't care, but we encourage you to voice your opinion so we can laugh at the fact that you can't control your emotions. This program contains full language, and I recommend no one to watch or listen to this.
The views and opinions expressed in the program do not necessarily reflect the views or positions of the sponsor, any advertisers, or the sponsor's affiliates, employees, or partners.
Coming to you live from the Claremont Lounge in Atlanta, Georgia, it's Campfire Moto Stories.
Hey everyone, welcome to Campfire Moto Stories. I'm Anthony Bennett, and I'm thrilled to have you join us today for our live show. This YouTube show / podcast is all about sharing amazing motorcycle stories from everyday riders like you. Whether it's an epic ride, a funny mishap, or an unforgettable adventure, we want to hear it all. Today, we have some fantastic guests in the studio who we'll introduce in just a moment, where we'll dive into their riding stories. Plus, we have exciting segments lined up, including pre-recorded interviews,
and all
tech tips,
for
spotlight a stolen bike, and stories sent in by you through the website and or phone.
a scam. Really, a scam set all this up. So for some reason, there's not anything coming out of there into here for us to hear. And it should be coming through here. Oh, man. I don't know. I really don't. I'm super lost on why this is not working now. Okay. Try this other thing. Oh, yes. Studios. Alright, Roadcaster 2 settings. And go to audio setup's not even an option.
Charlie.
Yeah.
I love that you called, but dude, I'm having some really crazy technical difficulties. And
Okay.
yeah, so I'm trying to get them fixed right now.
Yeah, I was looking and I didn't see any movement on my iPad.
No, the weird thing though is we can hear you just fine. So
Oh, okay.
yeah, I don't know what's going on with this, but we're gonna start it soon. And but I thank you for listening, sir, and watching. We'll maybe get you to call back in a little bit.
Okay, yeah, I got a couple good stories about it, Ray.
Awesome, thanks, sir.
Oh boy.
You didn't know people could call in, did you?
No.
Okay, so this is what's really weird. Obviously, I can hear from him, so the microphone coming in from the computer is working somehow, but it's not playing this for whatever reason, which is not going to work out good for my show sponsors because they play through all that stuff. So let me see what goes on with that. Nope. So what I'm going to do at this point, sir, is we're just going to start the show. We're going to start it right at this point, and then I will just give my sponsors a freebie because I'm doing another show at Day in the Dirt in Dade City on Thursday live. So we'll do one then. So as of right now, we're live. So thanks for coming to Campfire Moto Stories. Sorry about these technical difficulties we're having here, but I've got an awesome, legendary motorcycle road racer and just legend himself with the working and becoming the CEO of Barney's of St. Pete, Brandon, and Brooksville on and off a few times, right?
Correct.
Because I think at one time it was, and then he wasn't Barney's of Brooksville, and then somebody purchased it, Mike's or something, and then it went back to being Barney's of Brooksville again?
Actually, what happened is it was Mike's,
Okay.
and he fell on hard times. And so we bought it and got it going, and our general manager at the time wanted to buy it, and so we sold it to him, and then he had some setbacks, so we went back and fixed it again.
Well, I will say that I always start my show when it normally is operating correctly with an icebreaker. And usually the icebreaker is something that's either something embarrassing for my guest on the show, or sometimes it's been about me. And this one's a little bit more on me. There's something that has stuck with me. And I told my wife this just the other few weeks ago. And she goes, oh, this makes sense. Your nephew, Matthew? Was it Matthew and I?
He grandson.
Grandson, yeah.
Mhm.
Grandson. Was it Matthew?
I'm not sure. I don't know what the
He and I are
subject
around
is.
the same age. We were working kind of at Barney's of St. Pete around summertime. I think I was like 15 or so. Oh, I can't remember.
I'm not sure that it would have been. I don't recall Matthew working there, but
Well, either way, he
Okay.
and I were, the guys had the quads for moving the watercraft around. They had a
Yeah.
nice little winch,
Yeah.
drive them all over. So
Yeah.
we had the bright idea one time of drag racing each other.
on Oak Street.
Right down the middle of Barney's of St. Pete, the big road that went down there. And afterwards, you busted us, and I got a little bit of trouble from you, and you had a little stern talking with me. Surprisingly enough, I don't think you ever told my dad that, because he would have definitely chewed my ass out for doing that. But, so you said, you and him, and I think his name was Matthew, you're good guys. He goes, but one boy equals, do you remember the saying?
One boy equals half a man. Two boys equal no man at all.
No man at all. That is something that has just stuck with me. I'd never heard that until then. And with you saying that, it's just something that I just crack up about. Because it's true. You get two young adolescent boys together, you give them toys to play with or motorcycles or whatever the case is, and we're going to do some stupid shit, right?
Yep.
So drag racing wasn't too big of a deal, but also you wanted to probably nip it in the bud before it became too much further. So, yeah, that was just something that always cracked me up. Anytime I'd almost see you, because we only get to see each other probably once every, 2-3 years?
Yeah,
You
something
can come
like
up and visit my parents. So, yeah, just some other funny stuff that I remember you kind of bringing up over the years was even, I think it was a comment about me not having tattoos around the time I was like 22. I remember you kind of giving me like a, do you remember even this conversation at all?
Well, I just feel that tattoos are kind of hard to remove.
Uh-huh.
And unfortunately, people in my generation don't really appreciate them too much. And if you come out and try to wait on me with tattoos and a ring in your nose, that's not going to go well. And I suspect that there's other people. So when you're doing sales, you try to be neutral. You want to try to appeal to everybody.
Yeah.
And that's hard to do, particularly with the younger generation, because you guys are on a totally different wavelength for me.
Well, yeah.
Probably what your audience doesn't know. I've never even seen a podcast, let alone be on one.
Yeah, you told me, so the backtrack a little bit about the reason I was having audio issues. So my wife randomly on the drive home from Durham town, when I had all my equipment taken down, because I did a show out there with Mike, and I'm going to play it sometime soon. We didn't have good enough signal out there. So we get on the way home. She's like, oh, I signed up rather for like an audition thing that she found on Facebook, social media or whatever. So you do like a Zoom call with these people. And so I rushed back. I set up the equipment because I was like, oh, I've got a studio. That makes sense to do an audition if we're going to do one in the studio. So I'm rushing. But it needed to have speakers that were playing sound. So like if Miss June here, you're lovely, I wanted to hear exactly what we were saying, or if we were playing things, she would be able to hear that. It became a big cluster. I couldn't get it to work. We just did it normal Zoom without the headphones and all that other stuff on. So as it gets done, their thing was kind of even like, are you guys ready to commit like time? Is it financials? And the whole time I'm kind of like, I don't know, want my kid to go down this route, but she wants them. Whatever. It's a scam. So the next day, oh, he made it. Let us know which benefit or package you want to sign up for. One is $8,000, one's $5,000, one's only $1,000. And I'm just like, this is a scam. But dude, that was like probably the most professional setup that you could think of for doing this call. So either way, long-winded way of saying why my audio is all jacked up. And also forewarn people, hopefully, if you see things on Facebook or something along those lines about, get your kid some audition. Yeah, if somebody asks you for money, because a friend of mine I work with, his son has actually been in quite a few Hollywood movies, like lead roles. I guess say his name. But I told him about it. He goes, oh, yeah, we almost fell for the same thing in Washington, like D.C. Like there was another little scam thing set up there. So again, sorry about my audio issues, but I wanted to go into that long-winded explanation about that. But also, I was roundabout getting to why, when you called me earlier, you'd said what am I doing? I've never heard or listened or seen her podcast, and I was explaining to you, it's literally just going to be us just sharing stories and having a good time. So I'm going to feed you what I can to see what invokes some memories, and you kind of give me some stuff back.
Well, there's a lot of stuff in there.
Yeah, I just gotta shake it up and get it to get it to fall out. Well, hell, maybe your broken rib story. I think that'd be a good one to start with. Because he's got this thing. If he was to pull up a shirt right now, it'd stick up about out to here.
Yep.
And I remember you telling me it. So I don't remember the race. I do remember there was a bus stop you stood up from at one point. I think that was the third time it snapped out.
Yeah, and that was the last time.
Yeah, and then you just left it that way. So go ahead. What crash led to that story?
Well, actually, it was in Pinellas Park, Florida, and it was a scrambles race. And those things, of course, most of you know what it is, but it's basically motocross without jumps and the big hoops, basically a cow pasture. And we rode real sophisticated things like street bikes with the headlights out and suspension about 2 inches front and maybe 3 back. But they did have a straightaway there, and it was curved. And so it curved to the right. I couldn't see around a corner, and this was during practice. And lo and behold, here goes a spectator with a wife on one end of a lawn chair, one of those ones where you lay out and lay on it,
Yeah.
and him on the other. And I'm right in the middle of this, and I'm running at probably 60 mile an hour. I said, this is not going to end well. So I cut to the infield. They had not mowed the grass, and was doing pretty good till I saw a stump, and it was right in front of me, and I jerked the front end up, and I got it over. Back end, not so much.
And you just did that.
Yeah, basically mousetrapped me. And got back, went to the hospital, and they, in those days, they taped you all up. And I got back to the track, and one of my friends came running up to jump on me and say, "You're back in time. They haven't started races yet." And I jumped out of the way, and that broken end pulled loose, and I went down. And then
So it was broken, but it wasn't out?
it wasn't out.
Okay. So you
Yeah.
went to the hospital, they checked you out, it was broken, and then they're like, all right, let's
and
go.
And the broken end's passed. And that is fairly painful, by the way. And then I was staying with friends in St. Pete because I really wasn't too good a shape to be transporting back to Lakeland, where I was from. And got up in the morning and walked what ended up being my future wife to her bus stop. And I don't know what I did, but I twisted or something. That thing moved again. And I said, "That's not moving again." It put me down again. So that hurt.
Yeah. And because, I mean, most people, they talk about broken ribs. It's usually cracked ribs.
This was broken.
Yeah, it clear. I mean, guys, this thing is sticking out like that far. What section? Which side?
Yeah.
This side?
This side. Left side.
Yeah, so that was another story I remember you telling me back in my younger days.
Well, I'm not as beat up as you are.
Oh, I'm destroyed. Yeah, like you were questioning me about this thing right here. That's just a plate in my arm. Yeah.
Oh, I did racing for over 17 years. Got one tooth knocked out right here, and that broken rib, and lost some skin road racing until I learned not to get up on your run, still going 60 mile an hour. And that's all that really happened to me.
Really?
Yeah, I dislocated this shoulder once, and that's kind of a story in itself. But
Let's hear that one.
well, that happened up here at Road Atlanta, over in Gainesville, and we didn't have any practice because it rained. So they just lined us up, and back in those days, carburation was pretty critical.
Yeah.
But if you wanted to win on the Yamaha, you had to run it lean. Because interestingly enough, as you raced on, it would actually richen up on it and slow down, just backwards from what you would think.
Yeah.
And
What year was this?
oh gosh,
Rough guess.
70, 71, somewhere right in there. And coming towards us, the front where the customer or spectators are, they had a pretty long straightaway, and I don't know whether they've changed it or not. But
That's what I was going to ask you. So it used to go over the hill down to 10A, 10B, and you go under the tunnel. You go up another hill under the tunnel, and then you're turning on to turn 12.
Yeah, now that part's still the same.
Yeah.
I know. Okay. But that part right before under the bridge, all you had to do there was you could run wide open on the bikes that we had then. And all you had to do was basically sit up, burp the throttle, and go right back down. It was tight, but you could do it.
Almost like enough to catch a drag to slow you down a little bit.
Just needed a touch, because otherwise you run out of pavement. But And of course, like I told you, it'd been raining, okay? So when I went engine seized like that, and the next thing I know, I'm in the air looking up. My bike is doing cartwheels and over me. And one thing that has always amazed me, because it started with 6.3 gallons of gas, and it all came out in a couple of flips. How that gas cap even got open, I don't know, but it's spewing gas anywhere. So I landed on the concrete, slid into the ditch. Well, red Georgia clay. I'm not sure, but I think I actually picked up speed. But that was around 125 mile an hour get off.
Yeah.
And slid back across the track, and I don't know why nobody ran over me, but I bumped into Duhamo, who had crashed right in front of me, but I didn't see it, and he was laying in the same ditch. And they sent the ambulance around to get us, but I wasn't really hurt, and he wasn't either, but they still sent the ambulance. Then we got down to the hospital they had there. Charlie Watson, who was the national referee back at that time, he made us go take a drug test. But we'd had a drug test right before the race started.
You'd think that between now and then that you would have done something.
I don't know. So anyway, I get home to St. Petersburg, and I notice there's a bone sticking up here. It's not particularly sore or anything. And so I better go to the doctor. So I go to the doctor, and he looks at it, and he says, "That's just swelling." I said, "Well, that's not swelling. That's a bone." He says, "It's swelling. Come back in 6 weeks."
Yeah.
So I come back in 6 weeks, take my shirt off. He looks at it, he says, "You know, that clavicle's pushed up there. I'm going to have to operate on that." And I said, "Well, there's two things. Number one is if it does get operated on, it's not going to be you because you missed your chance. And, but I may or may not do it because it doesn't hurt all that much." And he says, "Well, by the time you're 40, you won't be able to lift your hand over your head." Well, I'm a smidgen past 40, and I can do it. So.
Hell, I don't even know. Can I do that? I gotta warm up to even do that at this point, and I've never even messed up my shoulders. I've had broken collarbones, but not shoulders. I've yet to had shoulder damage like that, like dislocation.
It doesn't like sudden stops.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's most of the problems that come with crashes. A lot of times is that's what I learned with the racing too. Is it's actually not too bad. It's as long as you don't get sent up or down really quickly. If you just go to a slide and you keep sliding and you kind of spread out,
stay calm.
Yeah.
Which is a little hard to do till you get practiced up. Yeah, it's. I did quite a bit of quarter mile short tracks, mostly for reflexes, timing, because if you make a mistake on that, flip by an inch, you'll lose by a mile. And even though I did mostly road racing, believe it or not, start's important. And reflexes are important. So I did that. Also learned to fall down gracefully on those. Not so much on the road racing, but I tried not to do that as much in road racing.
Yeah. So, what's another good one that we've got here? I remember you telling me a story back in the day about Barney. And I don't know who else was driving with you.
Oh, yeah.
But
Tom Carter.
Sleeping in the back of the vehicle, and they kept... So,
yeah.
Let's go into that one, because I just remembered a little bits of that. There's
all
some
right,
good stories of that.
It was one of my first professional races in Laconia, New Hampshire.
Mm-hmm.
And
give us a year, too. Paint the picture.
Late 60s. Okay. So just a Ford van is all it was. And so we drove up there, of course, and we did the race. And that didn't turn out too well for me because when they lined up to go racing, we won't mention any names, but Clyde James, who is no longer alive, forgot to put gas in the machine.
No.
So we had to pull it off the lineup and put in 5 gallons of gas. And so I had to start in the back. And I was lucky. They were already going when they slapped
The tank on or the
put
cap
the
on?
cap on. Well, it was a snap down cap.
Yeah.
Pop. But anyway.
Was it this vehicle? Was that the?
No. That's a Norton.
No, the van. Was it that van?
Like that, yeah.
Just like it?
Yeah. And so I'm full of adrenaline still after the races. And so we start home, and we're going to go straight through.
And this is going from New Hampshire back to Florida.
Florida, yeah. All right.
So that's a quick, what, 16-hour drive?
Not
14
back
hour?
then, there were no interstates.
Oh, no way. I've never even thought about that because that wasn't until Eisenhower that the interstate system got put into
They
place.
started on it, yeah.
Yeah.
There were some sections, but by and large, it was
Oh, wow.
301. But anyway,
So you're going through every little town, every four-way stop about every 30, 40 minutes?
probably
Yeah.
something like that. Of course, you learn to pass real well on those roads. We get about to, I think it was probably North Carolina, maybe. But I'm running on adrenaline, and I run out of adrenaline about 2 o'clock in the morning. And so the 2 other guys, of course, you can't do it anymore, but they're drinking beer.
I mean, you can.
I know.
You probably shouldn't, and you're
No.
less likely to get away from it.
Well,
It was a little more accepted back
yeah,
then.
back then you got slapped on a wrist.
Yeah.
Now they throw you in jail. But anyway, so I go back and I lay down on the floor to sleep beside the motorcycle.
And we're talking bikes, spare parts,
All that
everything
stuff.
is just back where you're sleeping, right?
Yeah.
If
it was
they were to crash,
yeah.
it's coming at you.
Actually, there's quite a few people got seriously hurt going to races that way back in those days.
I bet.
There were no seat belts.
Yeah.
Nah, you just throw everything in, and if you hit anything, it was like a bunch of torpedoes behind you.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, pretty soon they bump off the road, and they change drivers. And they woke me up when they bumped off of the road, and they take off again. And I'm thinking, gosh, that wasn't very long. And so Barney, and the other guy was Tom Carter, pulls off the road and he taps Tom, it's your turn to drive. And Tom gets out. He probably goes 20 miles. He taps Barney, and Barney gets out, walks over and gets behind the wheel, and he doesn't move. Just waits for Tom to kind of doze off. And he goes, your turn to drive. We didn't move 1 inch. I go, oh, come on. So even though I was exhausted, I wasn't as bad as those guys. So I drove pretty much the whole way,
So
actually.
basically you were like, no, you get in the back. I'm going to drive.
Yeah.
So Todd, your son,
Yeah.
had texted me a few different things, and he had said the story about Barney and Herb swapping drivers on the way back from a race, waiting for Herb to fall asleep so he could swap again. So is that's that story, or is that
story.
like another different one? Okay.
No.
So you had some of the, and I literally put it like what I had wrote, and then I like just sidestepped that one because I was like, these sound eerily similar. So I figured that was going to be part of that one.
Well, that reminds me of another thing, is kind of a side thing. Of course, we worked most of the time. I didn't race full time. I just raced, particularly as an expert, raced the nationals on the East Coast.
Mm-hmm.
And but I remember one time we were in a hurry to get going, and so we loaded all the stuff in the van and took off. we kind of left all the tools and stuff that we don't normally use laying there on the floor.
Of the vehicle?
No, of the shop.
Oh, left them behind.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
And we didn't need those particular tools. But when we came back, guess where all those tools were? In the bottom of a 55-gallon oil drum. Still had oil in it. Mrs. Barney was a little upset that we didn't clean up.
You left a mess.
Yeah. So they were very supportive, but she was upset about that.
Oh, that's funny. So did you have to fish them out with like a magnet?
No, we drained the tank and just cut the top out of it and got them.
Clean them out.
That was not a 15-minute deal. No. Yes.
So the lesson that you guys learned there is to take the extra 10, 15 minutes to put the tools away. Don't leave them out because it's going to take you 3 hours to get them out of the drum.
Yeah.
So that only happened one time. You guys actually learned your lesson from that then, huh?
We didn't get hammered again, I'll put it that way. But we were having a lot of trouble with the bike.
Yeah.
And we weren't sure that it was going to run right. And 2:00 in the morning, I did a test ride on it on Gandy Boulevard.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. There was a county sheriff going in the opposite direction when I went by with a open megaphone. It was a Ducati Formula 3.
Okay.
And it run about 110 mile an hour, and that's about how fast it was going in the dark.
I'm assuming no headlight.
No headlights, but they did have lights every so often.
Yeah, on Gandy.
Yeah. So,
Which is even kind of funny to think about it, like back in high school when I was there in like, the 2000s era, right? That was like the drag race strip was Gandy Boulevard over the bridge was known for that.
yeah, well, unfortunately, it's still a lot of that going on.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Huh.
The police came to our store and asked us not to sell any more helmet communications because they would.
No way.
Yeah, well, Gandy, there's only one way on.
Yeah.
And so they would send somebody up there with
The lookout.
lookout. And of course, the bridge is 2-3 miles down there.
Yeah, about that.
And they were racing on the bridge. And they'd say, "Hey, the police are coming." And
Everybody gone.
Disappears, yeah.
Yeah,
or they obey the law.
Yeah, I remember they passed a law around that time that was basically like if you are even watching the drag racing,
Yeah.
they ticket you
Yep.
like you're a drag racer, or you have to go through
Yeah.
the same ordeal as if you were drag racing yourself. And they did that as a way to try to mitigate people watching the racing.
Oh, yeah, they got to be a spectator sport.
Yeah, I feel like
Yeah.
it didn't change much. But
Well, I don't know too much about that. I go to bed at night now.
no, you said you're up till midnight almost every night. When I asked you about doing the times on this, you know?
Well, that part is true, but I'm not at Gandy Bridge.
You had plenty of your 2 a.m. nights there, I'm sure, trying to get bikes running from the stories I've heard over the years.
We worked hard.
Yeah, one of the things this is something that I don't even know, is kind of a little bit of the backstory to Barney's. Like, the years that it started, I believe it kind of started as almost a Triumph and Ducati and Norton dealer. Like, give me some of the backstories for Barney's and how that became.
Well, originally, it was in Bloomington, Illinois. 1946, I believe. And, of course, that's not a real good place to do a motorcycle business because of the weather.
So it gets a little cold in the winter there,
Yeah.
huh? Yeah.
So Indian told Barney and Rosalie that they could have the dealership in Miami. So they loaded their kids up and moved to Miami. Then when they got down there, they said, "Whoops, we made a mistake." So
Who was it that said they made the mistake?
Indian.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
I wasn't sure if it was Barney that said that.
No, Indian.
Okay.
And so they said, "Well, you can have the dealership in St. Petersburg." Then, but after 2 years, Barney pulled wrenches on cars, and Rosalie worked a ice cream store.
Really?
Yeah, and she said because
In Miami or in St. Pete?
in Miami.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and in 1950 they moved up to Miami and to St. Petersburg.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the place that they got was just an old bar, and the back part was a dirt floor, and they had a pole barn next door, and they went into business. Barney was good at building engines. Suspension packages, not so much, but
I feel like you learned that the hard way, but
well, yeah. Anyway, they got a fairly successful business going, and I was in Lakeland at the time, and I was riding for the dealership in Lakeland, and Barney's machines were always faster, but the guys couldn't ride them. So just beating the heck out of them all the time. And then I decided, well, enough of this foolishness. I'm going to college. And so I did. And I didn't ride a bike for 2 years. And mistake, probably. My dad was a builder. He wanted me to be a builder. And they had a course at Michigan State University that was called residential building, and it was architecture and business management. Well, I was into that for 2 years, and I came home at the end of my second year, and my dad says, "I'm sorry, I'm broke. I can't afford to send you back." I went, I didn't want
oh no, Dad, I'm so disappointed.
Well, I had some trouble adjusting because I was really a Florida guy.
Yeah.
And when you get up there, there's no sun from the 1st of November until May, and it depressed me. Plus, remember, no interstates. So you didn't just come home once in a while.
You couldn't just like FaceTime your friends back in Florida or get on the internet to talk with some of your buddies?
No, as a matter of fact, making a phone call was somewhat of a project. It really was. And anyway, I had worked in a bike shop that had sponsored me in Lakeland my last year of high school, and up at Michigan State. I put together bikes and stuff for extra money. And it now comes the part, this is the secret. Well, Barney had 2 drop-dead gorgeous girls. And so I started dating the older one, and I was over there.
You know your wife's here, right? She can hear us.
Yeah, she's well aware.
No, I know. I was gonna get into that actually down the road, just by the time I met you guys. But yeah.
So anyway, I was unemployed, and Barney said, "Are you doing anything?" I said, "No." He says, "Well, I got a mechanic going on vacation. You want to fill in him for 2 weeks?" I said, "Man, he's good. I'm not that good." He said, No. I'll do the hard ones. You just do the easy ones." I said, "Okay." Well, at the end of that 2 weeks, they decided to go on vacation. They supposedly said, "Well, I'm going to teach you to do parts." I said, "Okay." So I got one afternoon in the parts department. Wasn't too bad. Looked the stuff up in the book. It had the price on it and sell it.
The old microfiches you had to put
There
the
were
thing
no
on.
microfiche.
None?
No.
What did you guys look up parts with back then?
In a book. You know, those
I thought
things.
the microfiche was outdated from
It
like
is.
early.
But that was
That's
that was
what I do.
upscale. No, they
Oh, that's
printed
great.
they printed a book. It would have most time I have a picture with a little number on it with the arrow, you know.
Yeah.
That's what I want, a number 2. I look down here, find a number 2, give you the part number and the price. And if the price changed, you took a pencil or drew a line through it, put the new price on it. And then you had these things, you got a receipt. It was a thing about like that. Had the name of the store, and you'd write down there and the price and run the total. If you were upscale, you even had a cash register. You go, ting, 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 ting. Drawer would open up, put the money in, get the change. And so after they came back from vacation, I didn't do too much more wrenching. I did mostly the parts.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't long till they went on another vacation. And Mrs. Barney then said, "While we're gone, you sell the motorcycles." I said, "Okay." She says, "Put them out front. You know about them. Tell people about them. Prices on them. Sales tax is 1%. License plates $5. You can do it."
Easy peasy.
Yep.
So what, a whopping $700 out the door?
Oh, there wasn't anything that expensive. Well, I think the 650 BSAs are running $895, something like that.
Okay.
We were selling Ducatis at that time.
Mhm.
The Berliner group, which consisted of Norton, Ducati, and they had a thing called Sachs. One of my favorite ones that they had was a Italian bike frame with a German Sachs engine in it. Called them a Buccaneer 200. They were great for doing enduros. Anyway, they leave. She told me to put all the bikes out every day. So I did. And when they came back, she looks out there. She says, "I told you to put all the bikes out." I said, "I did." She says, "Half of them are missing." I
Because
said,
you sold them.
I sold them. So I didn't do parts and mechanics much anymore.
Now
after
you're into
that.
sales. You got promoted, huh? Well, they always say what the textbook definition of a sale is the transfer of enthusiasm. And you were enthusiastic about the bike, so that probably wasn't too hard of a thing to do.
Well, plus on top of that, there weren't many models.
Yeah.
I mean, even with the BSAs and the Ducatis and the Nortons and the Berliner line, it was only about 15 bikes.
Mhm.
And so it was real easy to know pretty much everything about those. And the customers back then somehow couldn't get on podcasts and
No, that wasn't a thing back then?
no,
Huh, that's weird.
no. And also, internet didn't seem to work very well back then. So people who come in knew nothing about the machines. So if you're a young, enthusiastic guy, you pretty well know everything about them.
Mm-hmm.
And there were a lot of people bought bikes in the when Honda came out with "You Meet the Nicest People on a Honda," and they had that Honda song. I think the Beach Boys did it, and boy, the popularity of bikes really took off.
Yeah.
And
And they also, because they did a great job of marketing to try to get away from that stigma of like bikers or gangs or Hell's Angels and all that stuff. That's really what they were trying to go with the Honda Meet the Nicest People on a Honda ad, right?
Well, the interestingly enough, my first day at Barney's, to back up just a little bit, I assembled a step through 50,
Mm-hmm.
one with kickstart, one with electric start, and a 160, what they call the Dream 160.
Oh, yeah, the Dreams.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And the step through 50 was $159.95, and the electric start was another $20, and the 160 was $399. Guess what? They didn't leak oil. The lights worked at night. It wasn't a big deal to start them. The British bikes had some good features, but you could be riding at night and it'd blow all the lights out just in a heartbeat. I literally, in the headlight, kept extra bulbs, tape them to the wires, the speedometer and tachometer cables, so that when they blew out, I would have some way to get home.
That's crazy.
And you would always know when it was going to happen. You'd be riding along, and all of a sudden the speedometer light would go out, and then almost immediately, tachometer light, tail light, headlight, boom, boom, boom.
Oh, jeez.
And there you are. So Lucas is not called the Prince of Darkness for no reason, and that was electrical systems that the British bikes had.
Wait, take me back. What do you mean, Lucas?
Lucas was the electrical system they used on most all British machines.
Okay, I've never even heard that.
Yeah, it's just like Lucas, Lucas.
Mm-hmm.
They do oil now, but it's not the same group.
Okay.
And but their electrical systems were
shoddy at best.
That's being nice.
And I will say, I do notice you've actually got a decent amount of little people watching this here. So if you guys do want to drop any comments, you can actually go into the comment section, put something there. If you're like, ask Ray about this or mention this to see if it brings up a memory. So just FYI on that. All right. So I just figured I'd throw that in there because we had more people watching than I expected with the chaos we had going on at the beginning of this show.
Well, I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing.
No, it's a good thing because I posted on my social media about it. Actually, one of the guys just commented. All right, so my buddy Joe talked about his Triumph and all the issues he had with it at Sturgis, and he literally said Lucas Electronics died in Sturgis. Like his Lucas Electronics died in Sturgis. So yeah, he knew that was the thing. That's funny.
Well, Triumph had some pretty slick stuff back in my day, because the starts, you didn't have gates. So they tried a whole bunch of stuff, flags. And then when motocross started getting popular, they used a big rubber band.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I've actually done a few rubber band starts in my day.
Okay.
Yeah, they still use them every now and then.
Before that, they had flag starts like, the motocross 250 races past weekend. They had to stop it.
Oh,
and they single file and everybody took off. Okay, well, that's how they started the races. Well, Triumph came out with this deal. You could hold the shifter down.
Mm-hmm.
And all you do is lift your foot off, and it would take off. You didn't have to do the clutch.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
So they had a big advantage. And they were one of our main competitors. Of course, later on, BSA and Triumph became one and the same company.
Mm-hmm.
But in the early days, they were major competitors. And I remember that had a hard time getting a good start on those guys.
And honestly, this is probably a very much unpopular opinion, but I think it'd be interesting, not so much in motocross because you've got a lot of room in the most parts to play with, but for supercross to do starts like road racing, because then that's a whole 40-man lane that you could make a track with, It'd be interesting to see if they were to do, paint marker start like they do with road racing grids,
Well, the reason they do that, and I happen to be real familiar with the reason they do that, there were several really bad crashes on the starts, particularly at Daytona and Talladega.
Interesting.
They would take the top 80 guys, and literally, I saw some cases where they had street bikes with Vetter fairings on them. And if you don't know what a Vetter fairing is, it kind of looks like it was a prototype to the Honda Goldwing front end.
Oh, like the Windjammer almost, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's same name, same company, different name.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
But some of those guys would actually qualify in the top 80 at a road race. So you got machines running, what, 150 mile an hour. My Yamaha 350, my last year, would run 162 with me on it.
It's still pretty damn fast.
Yeah, for a 350.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And anyway, let's assume for some reason that a guy that's running 120 mile an hour is unable to qualify in the first group. Well, they put him in the back.
Oh.
So you got these machines that are run maybe 100 mile an hour, and he's running
Right up them
120
really quick.
and runs into the back of them. There'd been, I think Daytona, I think there was a guy killed doing that. So that's why they went with the waves. 20, 20, 20.
Huh.
And that started just as I was
A
completing
young
my,
lad coming through.
yeah. So that's what that was all about.
Oh, yeah, I got a few people commenting in the chats about Lucas Prince of Darkness.
Well, if anybody had an old BS Air Triumph, they know exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I've never heard that before. Like, I know a lot of some of the older stuff, like points and those kind of things, but
Yeah.
that's a term I hadn't heard of.
Well, points, I kind of like those because if it gets screwed up, you could take a file or and carry it in your wallet, sand them, then you could stick something in there and clean it, and you could go again. Now, if your CDI box goes out, you're
SOL. Yeah.
you're done.
And that's not too often that they go out nowadays. Like, there's been plenty of times where I've chased a thing and somebody's like, it's a CDI, it's a CDI. And it almost was never the CDI, you know? It's always something else that's kind of crazy.
Well, the machines that are available today are just unbelievable.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Unfortunately, so is the price. And I'm a little concerned for our industry that our manufacturers have kind of lost track that this is a fun thing. This is a sport. It's not a necessity. And I'm afraid that with the push, sell more bikes, more T-shirts, more helmets. They're pushing the dealers pretty hard. I'm concerned that they're going to run the young guy that sold the motorcycles while somebody was off into doing something else. And
Yeah.
in other words, it's a fun thing. It's an enthusiast business, and I'm a little concerned that they're pushing too hard.
Yeah. Well, and even so, like, if you think back in early 2000s, right? There was the R6 and the R6S, you know?
Okay.
And that was the somewhat few year older model. Some updated stuff, too, to be a little bit better. But, you know, not everybody wants the latest and greatest, but they might still want a bike that's reliable, like the Yamaha was back then.
Yep.
So I feel that they need to do a little bit more of that, and especially the off-road side of things. Like, hey, you might want the YZ, but why not offer this one that's a few steps back, but still that for a whole lot more to get somebody in that price point? Because it is $10,000 for a dirt bike. Most people can't afford that. So I mean, you still got the Chinese bikes that they're probably going to go buy or whatever, but
Well, PW50s when they came out were like what, $399, something like that.
I don't even
People
know.
would buy them for Christmas presents because they could afford it.
Yeah.
Now they're by the time you get
2000 probably with
probably
tax and everything.
2000. Yeah, I'm not even sure, but once they crossed 1100, I thought, oh man, but it's it's bulletproof.
Yeah. The first one that was ever built probably still runs right now.
Well, the air cleaners on the first ones were not too
Too good. Yeah.
And I guess you get away with that, but not in Florida.
Well, I know I probably didn't even tell you this at some point, but or maybe had like Brailers PW50 I got for him. I wasn't not same thing. I was like, I'm not spending that much for a new one because I wanted to get one to keep forever. That if he wanted to keep and pass down the road, cool. So I just put on Facebook Marketplace as soon as Megan found out she was pregnant, like a search. So if a PW50 pops up, notifies me.
Okay.
And then I found one for like $800, 40 minutes away that looked brand new.
Is that a pink one?
No. No, it was a 2017.
Oh, that's pretty
Yeah.
old.
And
That's
this was
a good one.
2000, I think 19 or it was 20. He was like 9 months old. That I had been searching 9 months prior. So for 18 months until I came across that one and then hit him up and, gave him a sob story, talked him down to 750 from 800. You know how I am. So went and got that thing so he can just keep forever. Because you're right. There's no way I can cough up $700 that I'm going to just let sit for years and years and years, but I'm not going to spend $2,000 on one.
Yeah.
So, but especially it's the same bike. They haven't really changed other than some fork updates and a few other things, but they haven't really changed that bike almost since it was made.
They put a decent air cleaner on it finally.
Yeah. What was the deal with those? What was bad with them?
It was a small screen door at the beginning, and it just didn't filter worth of food.
So like in Florida, it'd just be picking up, or the sand would get right through it?
Yeah.
Oh.
Well, it didn't have any capacity, so that it penetrated sooner or later.
Yeah.
And of course, air filters, first thing that Dad wants to do when he gets home.
So
not so much.
Did those things come with a washer in the
Yes,
exhaust?
they did.
Yeah, even back then?
Yeah.
You had to pop that thing out almost immediately. It was that, and there was something else that they did
They had
to
throttle
restrict.
restrictions.
That's what it was. Yeah. Something else was saying some stuff with that. All right, let's get into some other stories. I got people wanting to ask about the Daytona race. I know we're going to want to get into that. I do think I should kind of talk about I guess it would be about the time that we had met. My dad had sold his Honda dealership in Leesburg and was around the house and getting crazy. And I think you called him up and was like, Scott, what are you doing?
He called me up.
He called you up. Okay.
Yeah, he says, I'm bored.
What do you got?
Can you give me a job? And I said, yeah, this talented guy. I can do this.
He's a service manager, right? Is that what he went there as? Or did you
no,
just
I
put
put
him
him
in sales?
he was in sales.
Okay. Eventually went over to be service manager, I guess.
And of course, your mother came with that package too.
Because she was bored? Because they both worked at the
Well,
Honda
I don't
dealership
know
together?
whether she's bored or not, but she showed up. and so we put her to work in the office and put him on the floor. And except that, I think he called me on a Friday or Thursday. And he said, I can't come until next week. I'm doing something. I said, okay. On that Sunday afternoon of about 4 o'clock, our store burned down.
So I'm remembering that timeline different then. I thought he was there for about a month or two.
No.
And I thought that he was in service at that time because we were on vacation in Texas.
I think that's what you're
when
talking
it
about.
burnt down.
Yeah.
So and it was
he might have been there for a couple of days or something, and I was not hadn't assigned him. I'd have to ask him.
Mm-hmm.
But
he's watching. He'll probably chime in the comments about it. He's already said a few things. But
anyway.
But yeah, so because I just remember I never got to see the old Barneys. It had burnt down before I've ever been there. So the only thing I got to see with it is pictures that were in the museum forever. So that's all that I kind of got to live by it through there. I remember finding a pair of like Tech 8s
that I got for free because of the fire.
Yeah.
But every time I took my feet out, it smelled of ash. So I was like about on the verge of throwing up. But I was like, free Tech 8s, hell yeah. Like you let me rummage around. I'm like, yeah, whatever you find, go for it. So I got to kind of walk around that after it had been burnt down.
Yeah. I'll guarantee you, you will never forget that smell if it ever happens to you.
Yeah. And that was lightning, right? Didn't lightning hit the box? And that actually is what caused the place to burn down?
Yeah, there were a couple of mistakes made there. We had 3-phase going in because the service department was in the east end, and the lightning hit the wire that runs between the power pole and the store, and it was pretty amazing, actually. Unfortunately, of course, the insurance companies are concerned that it was a financial fire. But as luck would have it, our insurance renewed in November. And that was a time when we had just getting all 3 stores going. And when I'd leave St. Pete at night, I'd always walk around, make sure there were no machines running, there were no coffee pots running and stuff like that. I said, I don't think that's probably happening in all the stores. At least not every night. And so I asked the insurance company, I said, what kind of insurance do I have? Do I have Cadillac insurance or Volkswagen insurance? And he says, you've got Chevrolet insurance. And I said, well, how much is it for Cadillac insurance? And surprisingly, it was only $400 a month more.
Oh, for all 3 stores or just
all
that?
3 stores?
Oh, that's definitely great.
And so
this is 2000s.
Yes.
Yeah, I think it was the year 2000.
It might have been November of 1999.
Okay.
I'm not sure. It was one of those years. But anyway, so they made me submit financial statements on all 3 stores before they would give me the Cadillac insurance. So anyway, what happened is that it came in on that line and it literally blew, and our fuse box or breaker box was, oh gosh, there's 3 of them and they're about 4 feet tall. It's just all kinds of breaker boxes in it, switches in it. And it blew the whole middle section right out onto the floor, like somebody had taken them out and thrown them on the floor. And the fire marshal said, well, that's what happened then is all of those...
my dad's calling in.
Okay. What happened then is all of those lines that are designed for 120 are taking 220, and it literally melts the coating off the wires. So it was like an octopus on fire.
Oh, geez. Because I specifically remember my dad saying he was in service and he was worried that it was something he left on or did when he got the call we were in Texas that it caught on fire. But then it turns out it was on the other building. So he was certain of that. Is that right?
No.
Yeah, that's pretty close to it.
So,
I mean, I may have had a lot of head injuries, but I've got a good memory of things back then. Okay, guys? Is that what were you wanting to call in for?
Are you talking to me?
Yeah, the person calling in, yes.
I was just going through the whole story and then saying, nah, that's not quite how it was. This is more like it. So what happened is just like he said. I called him up and said, Ray, I'm kind of bored. Do you need help doing anything? And he said, can you start tomorrow? So I showed up at the dealership and I said, I can start tomorrow, but in 2 weeks we've got a vacation planned out in Tyler, Texas, and so a good friend of ours and said that we can use their lake house and just have a good time for a couple weeks. So while we were out there, I get a call from Bonnie, and for those of you that don't know, Bonnie's Anthony's sister, and she says, "Hey, Dad, that place that you just started to work, I think it burnt to the ground last night."
Uh,
So I had to make a phone call real quick to see if I should take another week's vacation and stay out there, or come on back home as planned.
Yeah, and what I
So,
remember about that too, and that you were saying it is, who was it that whose lake house? They baked the trike kits.
yeah,
For
that's
gold
Vay's. Diane and Jeff and Diane Bay.
Well,
It was Motor
what was the
Trike
company?
Trikes.
What was it?
Motor Trike, and that was Jeff and Diane Bay.
Okay.
They bought that business in 1994, the same year that we bought Honda of Leesburg, and we met at Daytona Bike Week that year and just became really good friends, and we sold a lot of their conversion kits and put them on Gold Wings, of course, and and other bikes, and we just became good friends. They were good people.
Yeah, I feel like out of all the bikes that you guys had there, especially being so close to the villages in Florida, Gold Wings were definitely the most that you guys had. But I do remember that was right around the time I had my learner's permit, because I actually got to drive a good bit out there to get because you're supposed to get a certain amount of hours of driving before you get your permit. So I do remember that. So that was, that had to have been 2000, right?
Yeah, 2000, 2001, yeah.
2000, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But, well, yeah, I mean, since you're on the horn, you got any other stories that you want to bring up about it? Maybe you and Ray memory stories? 'Cause, I mean, other than on the golf course, because that's most of the stories you guys have had in the past 10 years, probably.
Oh my gosh, I don't think I can play golf anymore after today's game.
Is that why your back's jacked up? Because Ray made you play golf?
No, we were out there playing, and there was a snow or a frost delay, and we were out there at the tee time at the correct time, and watching who the other two people that signed up to play with us are, because it was just us two. And there was some college kids that came up there, and you could tell, man, I don't want to play with these college kids because they just kill the ball. And when they were stood behind us, and then another golf cart came up, and the starter said, "No, this is who you're playing with." And there was a couple of little Asian girls. Mom was with them in the golf cart, and we're like, man, okay, because we just can't keep up with those college kids. Let me tell you something.
Did they embarrass you?
These were two sisters. One was 11 years old and the other was 13. They're 6th and 8th grade. And these girls teed off the ball 200 plus yards, as straight as can be. I've never seen anything like it. Ray and I were like, oh my gosh.
Give us the college kids.
And
no,
gee whiz. But it was, so we wore ourselves out today, but we got to see why golf is so popular. These two young ladies in 6th and 8th grade, when they get into high school, they're going to be on a pro team, and you'll see them on the television on the pro tour. I guarantee you.
Do you remember their names?
Yeah, that was golf today.
it's their hard names. What was it? Man was the basic name.
Yeah.
And each one had a different beginning. But that 11-year-old, she couldn't. I don't think she could have weighed more than 80 or 90 pounds tops. She wasn't real big, well, I'll be 85 in a couple of weeks, so we play from the tees that are further forward. I'd like to start at the edge of the green, but anyway, that's what.
Yeah, except we can't chip.
She played from the same driving blocks that we did. And you would think out of 18 holes, we would have beat her once.
No.
No.
Well, this isn't a golf show, fellas. This is about motorcycles. That's why I said any stories other than golf.
Okay, all right. Well, Let's go to the motorcycles. Ray, if you haven't already done it and I missed it, tell them about the laps at Daytona when you I think you said you got second place. You
We're
you
gonna get
walked
into
me
that
through
for
that
sure.
a few times, and it was an amazing story.
Yep.
Yeah, so paint the picture with it. So I've heard it myself, and it's good stuff. So give me the years and the
1972.
bikes and the people you were going against. All right.
Well, that was the first year for the. Up to that point, if it was a 4-stroke, you had to run a 500. Harleys could run 750s, but they were like basically flatheads, and the 2-strokes could run 350.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well,
Now, were 2-strokes like the bike of choice still at this point, or with the way that it was set up, is it kind of equal?
Like I said, the 750s were just coming in.
Mm-hmm.
And so there was the BSA and the Triumph. Suzuki had their 500 2-stroke there. But basically, in the time trials, the BSAs and Triumphs were faster. The Yamaha 350, like I said, it run 162 mile an hour by itself. And that red line on it was 10.5. Okay.
Yeah, that's pretty high.
Actually is low by today's standards. But any rate, I'm sitting on the line. They use a 7-minute countdown. And they'll put up a sign 7 minutes. Well, the problem with the 2-strokes back in those days was they wouldn't start on the spark plugs because they were so cold. So you'd have to go out and make a lap, then change the plugs. So you'd go out with what we would call an 8 plug and then change it to an 11 when it was time for the race.
Is that kind of like the rating, like a BR9
Yeah,
ES,
yeah,
BR8 ES? Okay.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, they put that 7-minute sign up and you go out, make one lap, come in, and then mechanics have to change that spark plug. And of course, it's red hot, and you're nervous it's going to not get done. And in the meantime, those boards are changing 5, 4, 3. And anyway, you're sweating that. And I'm sitting there on the line, and I think I qualified on I think it was the second line, might have been the third. But I'm thinking to myself, these 750s in front of me are going to blow me away. And they told me not to cook the clutch coming off of the line, but I'm either going with them or I'm going to watch the race from the pits. And they took off, and I took off with them. And they didn't have that chicane in the back there like they do now. So you ran from off the grid out onto the main oval all the way around. And we were all drafting each other. And I don't know how fast we were going. But that bike, I told you, had a red line at 10.5. Well, it was at 13.5. And it was shaking. And the good news was it stopped faster. It could corner better than the 750s. The bad news was it wouldn't accelerate with them. So if you could hang right on them and stay drafting, you were doing. Well, 52 laps back in those days. And the 750s could only go about 17 laps before they had to have fuel. And we figured out that Yamaha 350 would go exactly 100 miles if you got it right. But you, on the
Like
pit
the
stop.
jetting had to be good too?
I'm sorry?
The jetting had to be like spot on kind of thing?
Well, the bike wouldn't be competitive if jetting wasn't on. Anyway, so those 750s all pulled in for gas at around 17 laps. And I was running in 7th place at the time. Voila! Now I'm in first, and I stayed in first place up to lap 50. And then Dick Mann, who actually helped me quite a bit when I first started racing, sucked Emde up to me because Dick Mann was on 750 BSA. Emde was also on a 350 Yamaha. Sucked him up to me. And I said, well, he's right on me. And I know the guy that goes onto this oval first is going to lose. And so I outsmarted myself. I faked overshooting the horseshoe, let him slide underneath me, and I stuck my nose right on his tail and got out on the oval and tagged him around there till we got about where the grandstands start in front. And so I'm going to slingshot him now. When I pulled out, it's like I hit a wall, and I couldn't figure out what happened. And so I became the first loser. Okay. and they tear those machines down afterwards to make sure that you're not running fuel or wrong displacement or some other cheaty thing. And anyway, when they tore my bike down, there were two things wrong with it. I didn't have any stinger, and if you don't know what that is, it's that skinny piece on the back of an expansion chamber. It's about that long. It's about that big around, but it's part of the tuning of that pipe, and it was gone completely. And I didn't have any rings at all on my left-hand piston. And so that's what happened. It just didn't, when I pulled out of his draft, it wouldn't go. And, but when they tore his engine down, he didn't have any rings on his right-hand piston.
So you guys are in the same boat.
We were in the same boat. But and I learned a lesson from that. That is, if you're in first place, don't give it up. Make them earn it. And that applies, I think, not only in racing, but in life, in business. So if you're the number one dealer in Pinellas County or wherever, don't give it up without a major war fight. So there's a lot of life's lessons, and you've learned them also.
Me? I've learned life lessons? You sure?
Yeah.
I'm still doing the stupid shit.
Well, what you don't know is your wife has a $2 million policy on you.
No, I know that she does. Yes, I'm well aware that she has a life insurance policy on me.
I do have a side note.
Oh, no.
Okay. 1968, the bank decided that I was an important person in the dealership, and they made me buy life insurance. Okay. So the company bought one, $300,000, and I got a personal one for $200,000, which in 68, that's big bucks. Well, that cost me $1,200 every year.
What? $1,200 a year?
Yeah, back then.
That's high.
That's back then.
Yeah.
That's back when you were making $50 a week.
Yeah.
Okay. So anyway, Clyde was my pit guy. And one of the problems with road racing is you're going so fast, it's hard to read your pit board. And so we got a big pit board, like this. And we painted the corners orange, kind of like that Honda there. Okay. And so when they stuck it out there, I could pick it out. And it was room enough to write big. And so life insurance is in place. And it was actually, I think it was at Daytona. It was either Daytona or Talladega. I forget. But anyway, instead of Clyde sticking the board out, because he had to run out and then get out back across the grass. Here comes Beverly, my wife at the time. She sticks that board out, and guess what it says? Can't you go any faster? I nearly fell off the bike laughing. But, I think she wanted to collect on that money. So anyway.
See, and I thought where you're going with that is that you were going to say that, oh, well, I knew about the insurance policy, life insurance policy my wife took on me. I didn't know about the one my parents took on me. That's what I thought you were about to go out with there. So that's funny.
My parents, my dad went to one race, and I hit a tree. It didn't do me any damage. He never went to another race ever.
I was going to say, I've never heard too many stories with them involving like your parents or your dad. So I guess they weren't.
They, even up until a week before I got my first two-wheeler, he said, "You're not buying any motorcycle. If you run over a marble in a road, you're going to crash." And but I must have ground him down, because 3 days before I turned 14, he went with me and let me buy a Cushman Eagle. And that was in 1954. But I had a job. I was a paper boy. And he said I couldn't ride it till I got my driver's license, but I was still 13. I could get your license when you turn 14. So he wouldn't let me ride it, even in the alley, which was dirt. And but he said I could ride it around the swimming pool, which we had an above-ground swimming pool.
With water in it?
Yep.
That doesn't seem like that good of an idea.
No, around it.
Well, yeah, but how difficult is it going to be to fall in it?
No, this is above ground.
Oh, okay. I missed that part.
Yeah. Okay. So anyway, I put 53 miles on that Cushman going around that swimming pool for 3 days. A big groove in the grass. That went over well, too.
Yeah, nice little track mark around it.
Oh, yeah.
In Florida, too, so I'm sure it was soft dirt. Didn't take hard to get that in there, get worn in there.
Well, we moved from that house into a new house in the Orange Grove, and that's kind of where I learned to ride in sand and stuff. And maybe it had something with my ability to do pretty good in that stuff. I don't know. But I liked road racing because it was fast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So pulled up that picture there. That's you on the back left there, right?
Yep. Yep.
Let's see if we can zoom in a little bit more here.
Yeah.
That was 1972.
Who's that there next to you?
The guy to the left with the binoculars hanging, that actually was my sponsor that year. His name, I can't remember his first name. His last name was Hutchison. And he invented the automatic transmission for Etzel.
Oh.
Which is a car, by the way.
Yeah. I've heard that name, but I was trying to put it together.
Ford product.
Mm.
And yeah, he was a nice guy. He'd buy the machines and the parts and stuff like that. No, wait a minute. Yeah. Anyway, he.
I don't think I've seen you too many times with hair. I don't know if I've ever seen too many pictures. Ever since I've known you, you've been a bald dude.
Yeah. Seems to happen. My mother's responsible for that. So, but I'm wrong on that. That's not 72, because there's no fairing on that bike. That's before that. That would have probably been, I think I was still an amateur then.
Well,
yeah, I was.
Todd had sent me this, and I had actually found it while Googling, and I thought it did say it was around that same year. Where's the
Well, there's no
article
fairing
for it?
on that bike. So, and my leathers that year, I believe, were white. I think that's the
No,
year.
this said that this article that was posted was basically saying this is the 50th anniversary for the Daytona 200
Yeah.
in 1972. So was 1972 the first year of the 200?
No.
No, because I see
That has
they're
been
talking about
forever and ever.
1948.
Yeah.
Not right now.
Don't walk in front. I actually, I may be wrong here, but that's Emde in the middle.
Yeah, that's what
right
I'm
there.
seeing here.
Yeah, and that's his dad to the right. And I think his dad was Floyd, I believe. I think he won the 200 or did real well when it was still on the beach. But that bike that I'm on, that's not the right bike. So those pictures are screwed up somewhere.
Yeah, I found another one I'm emailing to myself right now so I can pull up here, but it's going to take a minute or two to get it pulled up. So one of the things too that you'd mentioned earlier that I wanted to comment on was you said Duhamel or Duhamel.
Duhamel. Ivan.
Yes, not Miguel.
No,
His
Ivan.
dad.
Yeah.
So you were racing with his dad at that point.
Yes.
So the funny thing is, the last guest I had on had a Miguel Duhamel story.
Okay.
And I had mentioned your name. He knew you. But yeah, it's just kind of crazy to think. Anytime that I've heard that name, it's always been Miguel that I know
Well,
of.
there's got some history there.
Let's bring it up.
Okay. BSA triple. They wanted to set a land speed record, so they rented Daytona Speedway. They shipped 3 of those 3 cylinders down to the store in St. Pete, Barney's.
Mm-hmm.
And myself and another guy rode those all around the state, breaking them in. And then we took them over to Daytona. And the idea was to run on that oval for the fastest speed in an hour and then 24 hours, I think it was. Well, there were 3 riders, Yvonne, Dick Mann, and myself. And Yvonne was the smallest guy, so they gave him the fastest bike. And he would run, so he was the 100-mile guy.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And Dick Mann was the next level. And then I was supposed to ride the first leg of the 24-hour deal. And we basically all took off at the same time. Well, the whole deal kind of collapsed on us because the tires wouldn't take it. And Dick Mann was the first one to get a flat tire.
Yeah.
And then they pulled Duhamel in. I think he still did the 100, I believe, because he did set the record. But the one that I was on, 24, they didn't, because the tires didn't hold up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So Todd had just texted me, and he said that in confirming that this was the 1972
That
Winter
one is.
Circle. But that's the same bike that you were on in the other picture.
No, this got a fairing on it.
The other one had a fairing too, I promise.
Oh, did it?
Yeah, hold on.
Well, I'm old. I can't
I
see.
know. Do you need to put your old man glasses on here? What are we going here? I know. There we go. Here, take that one off. Yeah. See, there's fairing on that one.
Oh, yeah. Sorry about that.
That's why I was like, there's not a fairing on there. I'm like, am I losing my mind?
Well, that's not a long trip either.
Yeah. So my understanding, some of the things that I've heard and I've read, and I don't know if I have the story right, if it was Dick Mann or if it was Don, but there's almost a speculation or a possibility that somebody came out of pit row and shouldn't have won a race or something along those lines.
That is correct.
Okay. Do you want to get into that? So, and I'm going to, before you do, I just remembered something I was trying to do before the start of the show, or also we were going to be taking breaks. I threw all my beers into the freezer.
Okay.
And I don't want to leave them in there. So I'm going to let you start the story, and it's going to be on you. I'm going to run and do those so that I don't have to deal with an explosion in my
Well,
fridge. So I just thought about that a second ago.
It's not going to take that long.
Well, yeah, but they were already cold.
The refrigerator around the corner?
Right here. The one in the
yeah, if
studio.
you're going to 7-Eleven, this isn't going to work.
No. So, yeah, go ahead. Start with that. I'll be able to hear you and everything. I just wanted to tell you and be like, where the hell is he going? So go for it.
All right. All right. I read the book. My main mechanic at that time, which said that Don Emde didn't complete one lap. And I said, that's not possible. But in later thinking about it, and a couple other people mentioning it, remember that we didn't have any transducers or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
And so they had people in like a open stadium trailer thing. And when you came by, they would mark your number down. And that's how they kept track of who was leading, because this is 52 laps with pit stops and things going wrong. But according to Don Emde, when he I read his book on it.
Okay, so it was Don's book claiming Dick Mann.
Now Dick Mann's involvement in this is he was in the pits. He's having trouble with his BSA.
Mm-hmm.
He came out of the pits right behind Don Emde,
Mm-hmm.
and Don Emde hooked onto him and drafted him up to me. Okay. Because the 750s were faster than the 350s.
Okay.
Okay. So, but Don said what happened to him is his bike seized, and he coasted into pit area,
Yeah.
which is just a front. I never seized, and I don't think it would have been possible to come down that with your engine seized. There were no speed limits in the pits. You could go as fast as you wanted to down pit lane. And if he hadn't seized, I would have said, yeah, that's a doable deal. But if he had to pull a clutch in and coast for a while and then let the clutch out and it took off again, I suspect what happened is because of the location of that stand where the checkers were, I think they picked him up twice. But I'm not sure. It doesn't matter because it didn't make hardly any difference in my life at all, except I became the first loser. And and Don Emde was a journalist student and went on to become head guy at Motorcycle News, I think it was, and for many years. So it launched a whole career for him. It wouldn't have changed my life
One bit.
not a bit, except for the ego. So
The Eagle.
ego.
Oh, ego.
Ego. Yeah.
I must have had eagle on the brain because something, it's funny. Charlie Howell had texted me right before, and I don't know, Charlie, if you still want to call in or not. Definitely let me know if you do, or I'll look for you to call in. But I had thought about this before when you were telling earlier stories, because my parents were a big part of the Golden Eagle Motorcycle Club when
That's
I was
correct.
a little kid.
Yeah.
I was there every single Friday with them. They would actually drag me along. And but I remember they used to do races back in the day there.
Yep.
And I do recall you telling me at one point that you would race there.
Many times.
So what's some of the stories that you kind of bring up from that, or what can you kind of remember? Because that was just mostly flat track. If I
No,
remember
that
right.
was a scrambles track.
Okay.
It wasn't very rough, but it was a dirt track, a scrambles track. fairly short. Well, that was one of the places to race if you just were wanting to knock around. It wasn't an important race. It was local racing, amateur level. But I'd like to go there because good advertising for the business. And but there's only two things that really strike me that I remember distinctly about it. They were very gracious. That when Barney died, and he was quite young, they held a memorial race there for him, and so that was a big deal, at least for our family.
Mm-hmm.
But I had some battles with a gentleman out of Lakeland by the Emery Hayes, I think was his name, and he was riding a Sportster, and so you can imagine a Sportster on a scramble track.
Yeah.
But he was good. And
That's not like Josh Hayes' dad or something
No,
like
no,
that,
no.
right? Okay.
No,
I was going to say, that'd be kind of
no.
crazy.
Anyway, I was riding the Norton for the very first time. And I said, I was right on him. I said, I got this guy lined up. I'm going to blow him off right here. Yeah. Next thing I remember, I'm at the zoo in Tampa talking to my sister-in-law, and it's like 7:00 at night. and I guess I lost that thing, and it knocked me out. And I asked people what happened, and they said, well, you were just laying there, and Barney walked over there and poured a beer in your face, and you got up. So,
Charlie,
Hello.
turn the TV down. We can hear the background noise.
Okay.
But
Hey,
that's
great show.
we call that time travel for us road racers. You just time travel to the
Yeah.
future.
well, I have a notion it's not good for you.
Get him.
Hey, Anthony.
Hey. You got to turn the volume down on the other thing, Charlie. These damn old people calling in.
We're
Not
all
know how to work the technology. Jeez.
Yeah, exactly. I'm surprised I could do this.
What's going on,
So,
man?
yeah,
The
I
last
was,
time we got to talk was my
well,
dad's retirement party.
Yeah, I remember watching Ray at the Golden Eagles back in the, it was early 60s, probably 63, 64. And some good races there. And if I remember right, they first came out with the Boltacos right around that time. And to see those things screaming and running against the little Harleys and Tiger Cubs and something was quite a sight. They were really quick.
That's true. They were. I had a kind of a semi-sponsored ride from Ducati at the time, and Ducati's shifting was marginal. It wouldn't always work, and the Boltaco was equally as fast, if not faster, and lighter, and didn't seem to have the shifting problem. So
Yeah.
we had some wars, yes.
Hey, there's one other thing that I know you don't remember me, but we've my dad was a long-time Golden Eagle, and as well as Scott and Elaine and Anthony. I can tell you one thing about Anthony. He was a bratty little kid when I knew him. He seemed to have grown up into a nice person now, but he wasn't back then.
Well,
But we were talking.
you know what? No, I really haven't. I haven't changed much.
Well,
No.
I'm going to step in here because he's selling himself short. So we had to go back up to Brooksville and basically rescue our friend in dealership from going under. And Anthony was basically working at the Kawasaki shop across the street and down the ways a little bit. And in my personal opinion, it hadn't been for him, we wouldn't have had to turn around and make a deal to buy it.
No way. You really believe that?
Yeah, you're what made that dealership go. Yeah.
I mean, look,
No,
the Quasts are like
Wait a minute,
second
he's-
family to me. And I have joked with them many times because they literally have looked at the records, and the moment that I left is when it did start to go. But I joke with them about that because that's also this time the financial crisis happened in 07, 08 era. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
but I don't know.
Yeah, well, watch
I don't
out,
know.
right? He's going to be asking for a commission now since he
No,
made
I,
that
look,
save for you.
I know Ray well enough to know he is nope. Oh, sorry, that's in the past. You're not getting any money out of me for that one.
Yeah.
Hey, just one more quick thing, Ray. I was at the race for you in '72 at Daytona. In fact, that's the first time I've been to what was that, the 200 race,
Yes.
and I'm happy to say I have not missed a Daytona race since then. This year will be like my, I guess, 53rd year in a row that I'm going to Daytona 200.
Well, you got that coming up
But
this
besides
weekend.
that,
Yeah.
hey, the other thing I was going to ask you, and I don't know if it was you or another fellow rider at one of the Daytona races. It wasn't in '72, obviously, because I think you said you were knocked off your bike by another guy. It was a back marker or something going down the back straightaway, and you said you wound up on your back sliding down the straightaway, and your butt started burning up through the leathers because of all the heat. So you arched up on your head and your boots like an inchworm,
Oh, I
and then your boots started hurting. So you dropped back, you fell back down on your butt, and you did that for 200 or
Until you
300
stopped.
yards.
Well, all of that is true, but we've got it's actually two different races, and the one that you're talking about with the sliding was actually at Gainesville, up here at Road Atlanta. The most
Okay.
the most scary one that I've ever had, road racing, that nothing actually happened, but it was right on the edge of a miracle. They drew straws for the starting position in the 250 race at Daytona. And Ducati had brought over 5 special 250s for that race. Oh my gosh. The wheels had to weigh 25 pounds apiece. They were slow. We're talking with a capital S. I don't think they would even run 100 mile an hour. I know that the machine that I was using around Florida was faster than those things. I went out on it and I riding it, and I say, there's something wrong with this thing. I came back to the pits, and I told Barney was still alive then. I said, hey, I think the piston's hitting the head. And he said, yeah, there's no way. I said, something is hitting the head. I'm pretty sure it's a piston. So he tore the head off of the thing. Sure enough, the piston was hitting the head. So we put 2 base gaskets on it, on the cylinder. It gave us enough clearance. All the other 4 machines didn't make it 5 laps.
Oh, yeah, I would imagine. There's
And-
hits in the head.
But
The compression ratio is probably really good, though, right?
oh, maybe. But anyway, the bottom line was it also rained when you're supposed to be qualifying for starting positions. So you drew. Well,
You drew straws
yeah,
instead of racing?
for starting position. Yeah.
Jeez.
So guess who draws the daggone pole on this turtle? Me. And I'm halfway down the back stretch, And this was the year the Yamahas were first coming out. They were 40 mile an hour faster than this turtle I was on. And one of those guys hit me so hard on the left-hand side, it jammed my clip-on up into the fairing. And I remember I couldn't steer the thing because the clip-on was up against the fairing.
Yeah.
And it made me run over into the guardrail that's on the back stretch. Now, of course, the average person doesn't see that guardrail, but it's on the high side. And I bounced off that thing, and I'm still running wide open. And I look over that guardrail, and there's about 5 or 6 feet of grass there, and then the chain link fence. And I go, because I'm coming right back into that thing again, because I can't stay off it because of that clip-on. And I don't want to shut off. I get run over because there's 80 guys behind you. And I'm thinking to myself, maybe I can do a barrel roll right in between those onto that grass. I don't know, those poles there on the back of that guardrail. So I gave a desperate pull on the left-hand side, and the clip-on moved. Gave me enough room to
turn it.
Yeah. And
God, I can't imagine, because you obviously have to push that way to pull this way, right? Are you equally
I
having
just
to
janked
jam
the
it?
thing and it smoked the front tires. But it didn't go down. But the second half of that story is Jimmy Hayes was riding another one of these turtles, and he was right behind me when all this was going on, and he turns around and he does this. And we're going
Wipes the sweat off the brow.
Yeah, we're going so slow. You could have played checkers on those things. But in the meantime, Harley Sprint right in front of him let go. And this is how much time we had. I went, he turns around and misses a guy. So there's a lot of adventures, and I can't think of them until somebody says something that triggers it. And of course, the other side of my life was at the dealerships, and that was hard work, but it was enjoyable. I really liked the customers. I liked the business. And up until the last few years, I liked the doing business with the distributors. But after 2007, 2008, it got kind of rough. And to me, it kind of took the fun out of it.
But what year did you officially retire?
I don't know as I really have.
Well, you retired like 3 times, if I remember right.
Well, it's been in stages. I at 65, they threw me a nice party, but then the Brooksville store
do you still ride, Ray?
I have been riding dual sport up until 3 years ago, but I'm also got a little problem called AFib. And so the net result of that is blood thinners.
Yeah.
And turns out the cardiologist said, well, you know those marks you get on your arms for almost nothing? I said, yeah. He says, well, the same thing going to happen to your brain if you, even with a helmet on. And so he said, we can fix that if you're, in a metro area. But if you're in the middle of the woods, that's not going to go so well. And so
great.
I
was going to say, great talking with you, Ray, and good show, Anthony.
Well, Charlie, I'm not done with you yet, sir, because
Oh,
you had said about how is this bratty little kid and I've grown up. No, I will honestly say I have not. I just learned that Ray earlier was talking about generations and how they're different and the tattoos and this and that. And I didn't go down the round of tattoos, but I did figure out probably in my early 20s that adulthood is a scam. So I'm not going to
okay.
grow up. I'm going to get older, but I'm going to handle my responsibilities, which is why I've been able to actually have a family and a good house and a good career. But I'm still going to be that bratty little kid until I'm gone. And any of my friends right now, if they listen to this, they will text you or tell you in person that he is not lying. So
Well,
sorry to
that's-
disappoint
that's-
Charlie. I am still that bratty little kid.
Well, I hate to tell you, all those things that you named off that you do, that's adulthood.
Yeah.
If you
but-
don't do any of those and do all the other stuff, that's a
No. You don't.
you're
I can-
balanced.
No. Well, yeah, I'll do the balance thing, but no, I am still. But the shithead that he remembers me of, I am still that shithead.
Oh, yeah.
Well, that's
But I take care of business when it's needed.
yeah.
Well, back then, you were thinking about maybe somebody should have put a knot on your little head for what you did. But like I said, you seem to. I can believe you're bratty, but you're bratty in an intelligent way now.
Which is worse, honestly. No, and it's kind of funny. I can't remember if I talked about this on a few shows back or if I've just had this conversation with my friends, but people have said to me, like, you needed to be bullied more in your high school days, like to keep me from being this way. The problem is I was funny. So the bullies were buddies with me because I'd make them laugh. So nobody ever beat
I
me
agree.
up.
You were funny.
But no, Charlie, it was good for you to call in. I greatly appreciate it. I know we got to talk a little bit, like I said, at my dad's retirement party, and you shared some stuff. That's still awesome that you go to the Daytona 200 for, what'd you say? How many years now? 52? 305?
Well, from this year will be 53 or 54. I don't know. Starting in 72 up until 25.
Well, I'm from Florida, so I can't do that math.
Well, you know,
and Ray knows as well as I do. If you follow the Daytona races, it's not near the kind of race it used to be. They're 600.
not.
They're 600 super sports instead of super bikes or even. In fact, Ray, I think back when I was watching them at first, and you were saying the 750s, I think they called it the Formula One.
Yeah.
750 cc. And then it got changed to now where
600.
the quality of the riders. I mean, there's still good riders out there, but it used to be an international event where there were teams from Japan and Germany, England, and it's not that way anymore.
Well, the problem that I see now is there's a handful of guys that can win it, and
Right.
yeah, and in my day, there were the factory machines, and then there was the semi-factory machines, and I only ever got to ride one true factory machine, and that was unfortunately it swallowed a valve guide. That didn't work out well. And
so you were one of the top privateers of your time, though.
Yes, fortunately, thank goodness, and it was a fun time. I learned a lot from racing. I think the most important thing is I learned how to lose and not let it destroy me. And it just made me work harder.
And one of the best races in Daytona. In fact, they used to run it on the same day. In the morning, they would run the 250 lightweight race.
Yep.
And they were all pro riders. I mean, Romero and guys like that were racing.
Yep.
But when they came across that finish line, I mean, you could throw a blanket over 7 or 8 guys. They were that close.
Yeah. What people probably don't know, that exact race that you're talking about, I got third in that the same
Oh,
weekend.
did you? Did you?
Yeah, I got a pretty good payday on that weekend for back then.
What is
Yeah,
it,
I
like
guess.
$20?
Well, you got the two part right. No, after expenses, 23,500.
No way. And what year
Oh,
was
wow.
that?
72.
Jeez.
Well, what people
Yeah.
don't realize, you get paid. I don't know what to get paid now, but back then, you get paid
Yeah, I had no
$130 every lap you lead. And
Really?
yeah, I remember I said I led from lap 17 to about
Uh-huh.
almost 50. So
Yeah.
I think
Oh,
I got
yeah,
more money
I do
than
remember you
Emde
telling
did.
me that. Yeah. That's pretty cool.
Now,
Yeah.
and nowadays they give a Rolex to a pole sitter, which is probably worth more money than you got for getting second place.
Well, believe it or not, they did even back then. They just
Oh,
didn't
did
tell
they?
anybody. Yeah.
No way.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Really?
Yeah.
Hell, that vintage Rolex is probably worth more than the Rolex they're giving to him tonight. Like,
Probably.
this year.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. Unfortunately, there's none sporting my wrist.
Yeah. Hey, you don't need any of that. Well, Charlie, I mean, you probably didn't hear for the beginning of the show, but I'm going to be down in Florida this weekend, man. So I know you're going to the 200 again, I'm assuming. But if you're going to make your way over to Dade City,
I'll be there.
is
Give
the
me a
race
ring up.
is the
Yeah,
race
give me
Saturday?
give me you,
Sunday.
Yeah, you got my number. Call me while you're over there. I'll be over.
Yeah.
I'm going to the flat track race on Friday, and then the 200 on Saturday.
So
Oh, it is on Saturday.
I'm doing the Alligator Enduro on Thursday, which is Ormond Beach near Daytona. And then Thursday night,
okay.
leaving from there, going straight to Dade City. The owner of Dade City, Randy Yoho, and I are going to do a live show then. And then
Okay.
Friday, we're going to Croom, and then back to Day in the Dirt on Saturday.
Yeah, you don't have much free time then.
No, I've got plenty of free time. So, but no, I'll shoot
All
you
right,
a
give me a
text.
ring.
Yeah. Thanks for calling in, man.
Okay, enjoyed it. Thank you.
Bye. All right, are we back onto that? Well, that was cool. See, you gotta have some fans call in. He's seriously been a fan of you for a while. So let's see some of the other stories that I wanted to bring up here. I remember you telling me, do you need a bathroom break or do we need to do anything like that?
Not yet.
Not yet?
But I would like to say something.
What's that?
I've been connected to the motorcycle business since I've in either a vocation, or riding them or whatever. When I say racing them, I should say, since I've been 16 years old. And I'll be 85 here in a couple of weeks. And it's been fun. I've met a lot of good people along the way. Have no regrets to speak of. And it's a good industry with good people in it. And they just don't get enough credit.
Yeah.
If I've enjoyed the ride.
You know, that's one of the things I actually kind of was going to hit on like towards the end, but I feel like this is a good segue to lead into it is just think of the people that have made lifelong friendships that have met through Barney's. Like even,
Oh, yeah.
remember Norm Smizer?
Oh, yeah.
His daughter Tina and I have been like best friends since I was 15 and she was 14. We still text all the time. I went up to Budds Creek in Maryland a few summers back. Her and her boyfriend came down and hung out with us. Like,
Oh, yeah. And I before riding schools were around, I probably taught 1,000 people to ride motorcycles. Two of which I wouldn't sell them a motorcycle. I had one guy show up that couldn't ride a bicycle. And I said, well, you got to be able to balance. And you think that just comes naturally, but it does not. And he'd go about 5 or 6 feet, start to fall over, and I'd grab him. And I said, I'm not selling you a bike. You need to go get a car. And there was another one, just wasn't salvageable.
well, that was a little bit of a off tangent there, but yeah, I mean,
I can even think back to high school. This just popped in my head randomly. I had one of my really good friends who his mom was a judge and somehow became one of her best friends was who was the other title lady that worked with my mom back in blonde hair. I can't remember her name.
Kelly.
Kelly, yes. Her and Kelly are best friends for like the longest time.
Yeah.
It's just like the weirdest random stuff of how people come together because they bought a jet ski or
Yeah.
wave runner. Sorry.
Yeah.
A wave runner.
Yeah. Well,
Through that time.
yeah.
But
They were actually on the way to a competitor, and Beverly, my ex-wife,
Mhm.
sold them. And then,
Are you telling me that you know the people I'm talking about? My buddy from high school's mom?
well, I don't know.
Or are you
but
talking about the
Kelly's
family?
Kelly's family? Yeah.
Oh, okay. So, somewhat different. Okay, so that leads into this one.
What? Oh, yeah, Kelly Struder. Yeah.
Okay, go on with that then. That's kind of interesting.
Well, what happened is our longtime bookkeeper met a guy and moved to Arkansas, and she'd been with us for years. And we hired a quote unquote professional, and that didn't work well at all. And so I was trying to find somebody to do our bookkeeping, and Beverly said, "Well, hire Kelly." I said, "Well, she's got kids and stuff, and she's doesn't need to work here." And she says, "You'll do good." So we'll give her a rip. So we hired her, and she stayed with us up until the dealership sold.
Really? Just recently then?
Mhm.
That's
Yep.
great. Yeah, I honestly hadn't even thought about her for the longest time.
Yeah, she came. Came after the fire
Yeah?
and stayed with us up until October of 22, I think it was.
So another fun fact that'll probably people won't remember too much about the dealer. I'm really jumping around here. My ADD's kicking in. Evil Knievel used to come in a lot, right?
Actually, he might have come in a couple times, but he was not a regular for our store because he basically rode Harleys, Triumphs in the early days,
Mhm.
and we, of course, were BSA, so that was a competitive deal. But one of the other guys that was a big-time jumper back then, was a guy by the name of Bob Gill, and he had worked for us, and he raced for a while, and he took up jumping in order to make money to support his racing habit. And he was jumping a lake somewhere out. I'm not sure where it was, but he came up short, and he ended up with a paralysis from the waist down.
Mm.
So he's still alive, still doing good, and interesting guy too.
Well, the stories I remember about Evil were more in his olden days, like when the news store was around. Like he'd come over to the dog
Right.
racetrack, right,
Yeah.
across the street or something like that.
Yeah.
That's what I remember it as. So am I remembering that incorrectly?
At that time in my life, I was pretty well in the office all the time.
Yeah.
By this time, we had 3 stores and the mini storage business and the strip mall, and I actually was busy. So I didn't get to see the people coming into the showroom all the time, but Hulk Hogan came all the time.
Yep, I remember him coming to Sunshine to the motocross track with this kid.
Yeah,
And what was
but-
the DJ in Tampa? Bubba the Love Sponge.
Yeah, he came in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what? Randomly, I was at, God, this is going back like 7-8 years ago. I was in Charleston for a wedding. And I just randomly turned on the radio to hear Bubba the Love Sponge. And I was like, oh my God. I text like so many of my friends from like high school, like, do you know where Bubba the Love Sponge is? And they're like, no. And I was like, he's in Charleston.
Yeah, he got into some hiccups in Tampa, I believe.
Yes.
I didn't follow it, but
I remember like tidbits of it, but it's not
Yeah.
enough to go down the road with this show.
yeah.
But jeez. That's just bringing back like so much history and memories from like back in my early childhood. And yeah, time that probably, like you said, you were having to work. Wasn't that much fun for you?
Actually, like I told you earlier, I've enjoyed the ride.
Yeah.
I have no complaints. Met a lot of good people. Had a lot of good people working for me. And I shouldn't even say it that way. I had a lot of good people working with me.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, if not for them, I'd probably be standing on a street corner holding a cardboard sign. Feed me.
We'll ride motorcycles for food.
Yeah.
I do remember a bunch of like the Buccaneers football players coming through, getting wave runners, things like that. Yeah. I do remember trying to learn how to grind. There was an old concrete section that was only like this big, and like skateboard, like actually like grind on it, and actually like lost the skateboard, and it like went into one of the football players' like shins.
Oh, jeez.
And like I was just looking up at the dude being like, oh God, this guy's gonna beat my ass, and he just handed me the board. And it wasn't until later that somebody was like, did you see who that guy? And then I was like, oh, that's the football player dude. And I don't remember his name at this point. My dad probably remember it.
It probably was either Mike Allstott.
Yes, that was it.
Because he was pretty regular. And who was a guy that was such a good kicker at the time?
Oh, but he was, I don't want to say this because it makes it seem like I'm a football player, but I only remember it because I have a damn good memory. It was the third string dude who got, like, the other two kickers got put out, if I remember this right. And then he became the kicker, and he did awesome.
Yeah.
And it was like a French name.
I don't know. Can't remember. But he was on the team at the same time Allstott was.
Yes.
And that was, by the way, one of the best promotions we ever did.
Really?
Yeah. We got them come in and sign footballs and give the footballs away to our customers. And we were swamped with that thing.
Good. All right. My dad said grammatically?
Grammatica.
Grammatica. Okay.
Grammatica. Yeah, they were around there quite a bit. And those two came in and we had these piles of football. And it was, I forget what the customers had to do to get one. But, I think you're right about that. I think it was 30 days. If you buy a machine, you get a signed football. And I remember how much the footballs cost. They cost $23 a piece. Yeah.
All right. So I've kind of gone through, honestly, most of the stories that oh, no. There's one I'm going to get into, and I'm going to get through some stuff with Todd. I remember you, and I feel like this actually might tie on with some of the stuff that Todd sent me, but there was I remember you telling me there was some really well-known B-class racer, motocross-wise, and Yamaha would fly you out to the races.
Not Yamaha.
It wasn't Yamaha.
No, it was his parents.
Oh, his parents. Oh,
Yeah.
But he was racing Yamahas.
Yes.
And then you'd fly back the engine.
Yep.
With you. Okay.
Yeah.
Go through that, because that was just an interesting story. And I remember you had to get done at a certain time because of the dog races, right?
Well, that was my shutoff. Yeah.
All right. So
Yeah, the guy after Todd got hurt.
Okay.
The guy his name was Carl Jordan. His parents asked if I would do his machine, and so we hooked up. And I think it was his second year as a professional, rode 125, and so he had two machines. Let's talk California. He went to California, running a race. I'd take the bike, clean it, get the engine out of it, put it in a plastic bag, put it in my suitcase. He'd take me to the airport. I'd fly back to St. Petersburg. I'd tear that thing down Monday, order the parts from Yamaha on Tuesday, clean the thing up on Wednesday, and hope that the parts got there on Thursday, and then fly back with it. And when I got back, I'd take the engine out, put it in the frame, and then if I had any time left over, work on his practice bike a little bit, which I didn't usually have much time. So that was an interesting year, yeah.
And I feel like I might get some of the stories mixed up from my buddy Rick Lindell, who's done a show with me, but wasn't it you that were saying like he got like a certain parts allotment?
Yeah.
Or something? Yeah, what was the story with that?
That's what they would call I guess a factory B rider.
That's where the B rider thing came in.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not sure if that's exact label that they had on it. It was one in my time, but yeah, you get some help. The ones that they call privateers, even in Supercross today, they probably have parts that you can't buy. Maybe it's a different ratio transmission or fork dampener, or you never really know. They all look stock, but they're just not quite. So, yeah, even those guys got stuff that you really truly are difficult to get unless you're unless you're making the start.
Unless you got the hookup. Yeah. You're making the mains.
Yeah.
I just remember, what I remember is you saying is like he got like $1,000 parts allowance per year per season. And I remember being like, that's not that much. You're like, no. You could buy it at their cost.
Yeah.
So as where a piston would normally be a retail of, I'm just throwing out a number, $100, it would be like $20.
Yeah.
So like $1,000 actually spread out a lot. And I kind of remember that being pretty interesting, that was how they would do things back then for those guys.
Yeah.
But yeah, what was the bit about it? And actually I feel like it was the same shed that I got the boots from the fire.
No, that building didn't burn down.
That one didn't. Okay. No. So which building was it that you used to go in to do? Because I remember you were saying, what was the cutoff time? You had to be done by this time because the dog races were getting let out and you didn't want to get stuck in that traffic, right? Wasn't that your...
When we were doing amateur races all the time, and I was doing Todd's bike, and I was doing a few other bikes too, because quite frankly, I didn't have the money to do it all myself. So I would help other parents that perhaps were a little more affluent than I was, and I'd get Todd's bike running and then duplicate it. And but store closed at 6. So change clothes, go out to the race room, which is a separate building, and work on bikes. The reason 11 o'clock is because the dog track was running all the time. They let out, I couldn't get home. There was too much traffic. So I figured out that if I get out of here at 5 minutes to 11, I can get right home. And if I miss it, then it's a half-hour drive, and it's only 2 miles. So,
and I'm picturing there basically being like one of those old alarm clocks with like the 2 bells on it, and you just kind of hand wind it to go up at
I had one of those big. I think it was can't remember what kind of clock it was. Either Coca-Cola or something like that.
You just constantly kind of.
Well, pretty soon you figure out about when it's going to happen.
You're hearing the noises and the other things in the background.
Well, they when they're going to do the race, they go da 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 da, and when it's quiet out there at night, and the doors were open, I could hear it. But also, pretty soon you get in that routine. You know what's coming. It's kind of, why do you wake up at 7:30 in the morning on your own?
I'm up at 6:30 almost every single damn day, and I hate it, even on the weekends.
So you get programmed.
Yep. All right. So that moved through all the ones that I was going to say. And you having a good time? Do you need a break or anything real quick? I know I said something earlier.
Well, other than my wife is over there about to kill me.
Is she ready to pass out?
No,
I'll get my parents to come pick her up. You let me know.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
No, I don't want to bore people any, and
No, it's not a bore. This is good stuff. People are gonna love this. I'm telling you. I'll bust through some of these things real quick and see if there's any stuff that kind of brings up some memories. One of the shop trucks leaked oil so bad that you guys had a hose and a.
Oh, that was when I first came to work there. They had this old Chevrolet. I'll tell you how old it was. The floor and the bed of the back was wood. Okay. It was old when I was there. And it smoked so bad that you could just about couldn't put oil in it fast enough. And they would throw you off the road now. But Barney was very ingenious on that kind of stuff. So he just drilled a hole in the firewall, put a hose in there where it goes in, fills it up, and he duct taped that or electrical taped it so it'd stay in there. And then he had the funnel and had the oil cans there, and they used to have like beer can openers. And you just pour in some, and yeah, those were the good old days.
Did you guys have it figured out? All right, for every 100 miles, you got to pour in 1 quart of oil, basically.
I don't remember that part, but it probably wasn't that far.
Did you guys ever even change the oil filter, or was it just you were recycling
that was
the
not
new
my
oil?
job description. my job description was go down to the Ace or to the automotive store and get a muffler bearing. Of course, I didn't know what a muffler bearing was because there wasn't any such thing.
Nice.
Yeah.
So this I thought was pretty interesting, especially since I'm going to be going down to Croom this Friday, is that Todd had said you had a role in the agreement?
I did have a very prominent role in that, yes.
Interesting. So
Yeah.
I've always wondered the story of Croom and how it started. And also I had heard that it was hunting ground.
That's correct.
And for how many ever months until some asshole hunter didn't want somebody on their trail, so they like booby trapped it.
Yes.
And it damaged somebody, and at that point they kicked the hunters out, right?
Not exactly. It was a lot more complicated than that.
Well, let's go down that road of that story, because I feel like that's going to be interesting.
Well, we were supposed to race at Date City, and it rained. The guys from Ocala, were competitors, but we're kind of friends too, said, hey, we know a place up here. We can go ride, and it won't hurt if it's a little wet. I said, okay. So instead of going Brambles Track at Dade City, we went to what is now Croom. And what it was is originally was an old mining facility.
It was a quarry, right?
Yeah. But that's back in the horse and buggy days. So the hills weren't
that far back. Really?
That's how they were formed.
No
the hills
way.
And stuff. Yeah. And so, hey, you had all of these hills to climb and stuff. Florida's flat as a pancake. And this was a whole new deal. And so once we knew about it, now all of a sudden Tampa Bay area knows about it. So the popularity goes up significantly.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, it was a hunting area. It's part of the whole forest area there, Withlacoochee forest area. And then there started to become conflicts between the hunters and the motorcycle riders. And it got pretty bad, like boards with nails in them.
Yeah.
Clotheslines strung across the tree where the trails were. I think a couple people got hurt. Fortunately, no, I don't think anybody ever got seriously hurt or killed, but it became a big deal. So they started having town meetings at Brooksville Courthouse, which, by the way, is still there. Well,
I know. I've been there a few times when I lived in that
will you
section
make
of
any
Florida.
donation to their coffers?
I'm sure plenty of times I have donated to
Okay.
to Brooksville Courthouse.
So, anyway, about 5,000 people showed up 2 times in a row, which just overwhelmed the hunters. So they decided to break off that 2,650 acres that's now called Croom. And then we ran into all kinds of legal problems because the forestry department can't make a rule that you can ride with no license plate. That the law in Florida says anywhere a vehicle can traverse has to be street legal. We had to get that fixed. That required 2 trips to Tallahassee, and there was 2 other guys involved in that were in the Florida Trail Riders back then.
And is that what became the Suncoast Trailblazers?
Could
Or
have
is that
been. I
okay?
didn't
'Cause
follow
that's
it.
the
Yeah.
group that I kind of remember was part
Yeah.
of the Croom Enduro. Was that name?
Well, then after they finally got it approved, the motorcycle riders started going well beyond that area. And that got things all stirred up again. So then they decided that they would put blue paint on the trees. And if you went past the blue paint, you were in the wrong side. You had to go back. Well, it made so much money for the fees that they didn't know
they built
what
a fence around the whole place.
Yeah, they did.
Yeah.
They didn't know what to do with the money because state's not used to taking a profitable thing in.
Yeah.
They just send it out. So they put a fence around it, and that's how it came to be. Yeah. But that wasn't a 15-minute deal. That took several years.
Yeah, and for the longest time, it was like $20 for an annual pass. Was it the $20 at the beginning when they started bringing that in?
It was free.
Well, you said they were making money from
yeah,
it,
but
right?
it was up to when they finally got everything settled. Yeah. You know what? I don't know. Somebody's got an annual deal.
I think now the annual pass is like $50 for a bike, but I just remember
Yeah,
for
but
the
mine was
longest
free.
time it was $20.
Yeah.
And it was the best because I mean, I'm gonna spend $20 to go to Dade City one day, or I can get a Croom sticker, $20 for a whole year.
Yeah.
So I remember my very cheap father would definitely take us to Croom over Dade City all the time.
Wise decision.
Well, I don't know. I mean, that's Croom right there.
That's from Croom?
Yeah.
Jeez.
But I was also like 24 when I did that, so that's nothing to do with them at all.
Yeah. No, the forestry department was real key on helping do that. I remember the guy's name that spearheaded it on their side was Jeff Lewis. And
that worked at the dealership.
No. He worked for the state of Florida.
Oh, there's a Jeff something that works as a dealer then that I'm thinking of.
Yeah, no,
Or
that's
Jack's. Yeah, that's who I'm thinking of.
Yeah, but anyway, no, he's by my standards then he was old, but he's a young guy now.
Well, I do remember what I heard when I was much younger is that Croom is the only state park to show a profit every single year.
Well, that's how it was when I was heavily involved in it.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah, that was a big deal. That was a big deal.
I feel like it's a big part of why it kept going, is because it's like, why would you shut something down that's actually profitable? You know?
Well, I understand. It has to be profitable now because they've got a small bulldozer for doing.
Yeah,
that
they
was,
actually
and
clear out
that was
trails.
another hiccup. They wouldn't smooth out anything because they were afraid that they would. I forget the name of the society. Something about you might destroy something that was left there 200 years ago
No.
because there's a couple of graves back there. I don't know whether you know that. Yeah, back not too far from where the camping area is.
Yeah, I was just about to say, like, near the camping area.
You're not
Yep.
too far away from there. Yeah.
No, my old roommate still lives there and rides a lot. He knows, I know every inch of it, but he knows every millimeter of it. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Well, it's changed so much. I probably couldn't find my way around in there anymore.
Nah, you could. It's the thing that's always the different. That's always the same. So, all right. So let's hit on a few other quick ones. And if you tell me like, hey, look, Murder She Wrote's over. It's time for bed. You just let me know, okay, sir. But there were some really neat things that he brought up. Like in 1976, Yamaha came out with a monoshock company superior build monoshock frame for Todd's YZ80.
Yep.
Remember thinking any cool stories about it? There was a dampening control.
I could see that the monoshock was going to be the future. At that point, they were still running 2 shocks.
Mm-hmm.
Suzuki came out with our RMs, and the shocks were moved way forward. Gave them pretty good travel. I did that first. It worked okay, but I could see that the monoshock. So I went to this guy and said, "Build me this," and he did, and worked out pretty well.
So you basically were kind of fabbing up monoshocks before they became a thing for the bikes.
Well, for the 80s.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were coming into with the the 250s and the 125s, but that's what turned me on to it.
Mm-hmm.
I made 2 mistakes there that one of them is it made it a little too high, so it made it a little hard to ride in the corners, and the other one was I could never control the rebound dampening on the rear shock the way I wanted to, because you didn't have the adjustments. Like it just was a shock, and screwed around with that for quite a while. But then Todd got bigger and we put him on a 125, and that problem went away.
So I'm assuming there wasn't any linkage that you made with this. This is welded straight to the swing arm at that point.
No, the linkage like they have now.
Mm-hmm.
No.
Yeah.
No, it was just straight to the swing arm.
Yeah, and then actually he said like in 77 there's still some suspension improvements. Dad took a cue from RM, laid down dual shock concept.
Yep.
Completely modified the frame to accommodate that.
That was a whole frame.
Well, that's kind of part to that other one. So, but you had made a comment about him going up. So there's something about in 79, Todd moved up to riding like the 100 and 125, and you figured out they both use the same frame?
Yep.
So what's kind of the story to that one?
There was so much going on right then. I'm not 100% sure, but
yeah, he said that there's some Simon Forks and a Fox Air Shock.
Yep.
He obviously, Todd should call in and talk to some of these things.
Yeah. he remembered.
They're a little more core memories
poor guy
for
had
him.
to ride it. Yeah, I tried to turn a 80 into a 100 by stroking it, and that didn't work. And there were a lot of things that we did. I was working on them all the time, and found out that at least in most of the guys I was working with, if I could help control the fatigue factor, That would make a huge difference. So suspension and little things like take the carburetor apart, stretch the throttle spring, cut off a third of it. And so when you got tired at the end, they didn't have that pull on the throttle. Lube the cables every single race so that they
Pull in a little easier.
real easy. Yeah. Just a lot of little things like that. Tried a bunch of stuff. And one of the things that worked, better give Todd some credit here because he had to write all of those basically prototypes. And so I tried to get one that was better than any others. And I don't know why this is, but you could take two of them out of a crate and he would like one better than the other. And so what I would do is do the stuff basic on the one that he liked that I knew. Then I would move to the one that he didn't care for as much and try to make it better than the one he liked. And then when he got that one, then do the same thing the one that he liked. So you get about 6 months into the year and you got a couple of units that are pretty good.
So I'm going to jump around a little bit. So this was actually more on my notes than this, but something that I've heard a few stories about, Todd's crash at Gatorback, that kind of stopped him from racing or going forward.
Did.
Well, yeah, it did, right?
Yeah.
Because he was what, 15, 16 at the time?
16.
Maybe 16, okay. And oddly enough, actually, one of my guests a few shows back, Mark Crozier, I had sent them the link and said, hey, do you remember Ray at all? And he goes, did he have a son named Todd?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, he did.
And he said, he was fast. He was a little bit older than me, but I remember coming through. And Mark had made a comment about Nicole. Who's Nicole? He had somebody's daughter or somebody. Remember?
Yeah.
Your son's wife. Okay.
No. Her son's wife. She wasn't in the picture. No, what I can kind of tell you what happened on the Todd thing if you want. I mean, it's
No, I'm sorry, not Nicole. Natalie.
my daughter.
Your daughter.
Yeah.
So I guess he and her dated a little bit back in the day, like around Gatorback time or something like that.
No. My son did not date my daughter.
No. My old Mark, that was on my show.
Oh, he might have.
Yeah. So that's when he was like, wait, did he have his son named Todd? And I was like, yeah. He's like, he had a daughter named Natalie then.
Yeah.
That's what it was.
Yeah.
I honestly don't know if I remember you having a daughter, Natalie. Have I met her?
Probably not. You would. I probably remember if you did.
Yeah.
Yeah. She's.
I feel like this is like teenage days
Well,
that he was talking about.
She worked a lot at the motocross track scoring. In other words, keeping track of guys
Yeah.
when they came by, and she was real good at it. But unlike some of us, she moved on to more
Intelligent things.
intelligent things. Yeah. She's a very successful CPA down in Parkland, Florida.
Okay.
And we're getting to see quite a bit of her now because I think she keeps coming by to check on us, make sure that we're still sane and eating and stuff like that. Hate to tell her we never were, but that's okay. But
when he said it threw me off because I was like, yeah, no, Todd. I don't know if I've ever talked to Natalie or met her or seen her or anything. So that threw me for a loop.
yeah,
I was almost questioning it.
she's plays tennis and has kept herself in very good shape.
Good.
She looks way younger than she is.
I like to think I do too. I still feel like I look younger than I am. So
Well, I'm glad you're not taking votes. So.
Damn, old man's got some insults.
Uh,
All right, so this was kind of interesting. So Todd said when his racing days are over, you joined a business group run by Ed Lemko.
that's correct.
What? Some of the stuff he put in here was kind of just like the 20 club. What came of that?
20 Club. Well, it taught us how to get the jetting right in a dealership. If that
Okay.
okay. Most of the dealers from that era were enthusiasts, like me.
Mm-hmm.
I had some business education, but I can promise you, if you get a degree in business and try to run a motorcycle dealership, you probably aren't going to make it, because it's just very difficult with quite low margins, and you just got to keep all the plates spinning. And the 20 clubs would be 20 dealers that were not in competitive markets. Okay. So you couldn't have a St. Petersburg and a Tampa guy, or an Atlanta and Macon.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Too close.
Too close. But you can have a guy from Atlanta and a guy from St. Petersburg and from Los Angeles
No.
and Chicago.
New York, like basically the
wherever.
big hubs. Yeah.
Yeah. And they came up with a format that you filled out every month. And basically it's a financial statement. And it covered all kinds of things, like how many bikes you sold, what the margins were, ATVs, what was your parts revenue, what was your service revenue, what about your F&I, and you would get everybody's financial statement once a month. So you fill one out, send it to the headquarters, which was in Denver. They'd put it in a book, ship you the book, and you could go, I wonder how Atlanta's doing. Kicking our butt. It taught you best business practices. The thing that I really liked about it was you could look at somebody's financial statement and you could see, for some reason, in motocross bike sales, he's way up. Well, when you look at the graph, everybody's like this. What's this guy doing different? Okay. So you question him, because you get together about every 120 days. We all fly into the same place, and we're all sitting there talking to each
You
other.
guys didn't do Zoom or Skype meetings or something?
There wasn't any of that crap back then. And I don't think it would be as effective.
Yeah.
Because when you're sitting there eyeball to eyeball, sometimes ego's getting away, and they'll say, well, I did. They didn't tell anybody they were selling motocross bikes at $100 under cost or something like that.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's where those came from. We were able to improve our bottom line several percentage points from picking up ideas from other people.
Yeah.
I think it would be good for every businesses to do that, because you don't know it all.
Yeah.
You may think you do, but you don't know it all. You may be thinking you're doing everything perfect, but the reality is you're probably not doing a whole lot as well as it could be done.
Yeah, and I can't even imagine how many like aha moments you would have from doing those meetings every 120 days, being face to face with a person like that.
I got myself in a bunch of trouble after the first couple because I'd come back and say, "Oh, we're gonna change this," and everybody just went into rebellion.
Yeah.
So I said, "Okay, slow
Baby
down."
steps.
So from that time on, I would make notes as we're going through the meetings. And then you're always flying. So I'd get on a plane, I'd drag those notes out, and I'd look at them again and say, which one of these things looks the best to me for my dealership? And I would draw a circle around it. I'd pick 3. Okay. Then when I get home, review them again and pick 1 and try to do that one thing before the next meeting.
Yeah.
And granted, it takes time, but our profit percentage went up considerably, and
grew Barney's into the powerhouse it became to be, right?
In 25 words or less, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, it's funny to hear you say that because I remember it had been '02. It was probably the year that Langston and KTM started getting traction. And I remember coming to you and was like, the KTM 125 has 5 more horsepower than anything on your showroom. Why don't you get KTM? And you grabbed your dealer magazine out of my Motocross Action magazine or whatever magazine I had at the time, and you flipped to the back. God, I can't believe I remember this so well. And you showed me a circle chart that showed percentage of who did what the previous month in this magazine. And he said, "You see that right there, the red, like 36%, maybe it was 39. I'm just throwing numbers." He goes,
Yeah.
"See that orange? That's 10%. That's why I don't have KTM." And I was just like, holy shit. Okay. Yeah. This guy, I could understand why it was that you weren't planning to bring KTM at that time. Oh, you bringing him a soda?
No, I don't. Open it for you.
I would have opened it for you. You're on camera, Miss June. Why don't you turn around and say wave? This is Ray's lovely wife. No, just look to the camera. Just wave. Won't do it. Here, I'll cut you off so you're not seen. There you go. I'm changing the camera angles the whole time we're doing the show. But we are getting close to wrapping up. That was one thing that I kind of thought. One of the things, and unless there's other stories you want to hit on or things to bring up, is I feel like this could be a 20-hour show if you were to sit down and write them all out. But
I don't remember it unless somebody says something that triggers it.
Triggers it up. But what is probably the craziest situation you dealt with, if you can think of it, of catching somebody stealing something from the dealership? I felt like it was always the thing. I remember this one dude that I was buddies with. He was a few years older than me, and looking back, I'm like, he was a little bit quirky. Is Kenny? I don't remember his last name, and don't say it if you do. But he got busted taking $100 from somebody that was returning a jacket or something along those lines. So you probably don't even remember it because you had so many of those situations to deal with.
Didn't have too many of them, actually.
Really? That's good. Because I recently was talking with somebody at Mountain about that and was like, dude, you should come on the show and just talk about those things. And he looks me right in the eye and goes, I literally had to fire somebody today from one of those situations. And I was like, see, there's a lot of those stories. So yeah, you didn't have too many of them, huh?
No, 3 that I remember. There is a side note to that. Well, I'll tell you how it happened. They would throw the parts in a dumpster and get them after we were closed.
What?
Yeah. That was a bad one. And, but I had a guy, this wasn't too many years ago, came to me, walked in, I didn't recognize him. He says, I'm so-and-so, and I used to work for you. You remember me? And I said, well, not really. He says, well, that probably because it was 25 years ago. I said, okay. I said, well, what happened? He said, you fired me. And I said, what did you do? He says, I was stealing. And I said, well, then you deserved it. And he said, yes, I did. He said, you know what I do now? He says, I have no idea.
Let me guess. Loss prevention?
No.
No, that would have been
It's
good.
worse than that.
Corrections officer.
I'm the area rep for a major manufacturer, which I know, by the way, but I'm not going to bring it up,
Oh, okay.
in Oregon. And he says, your fire changed my life.
Good.
So sometimes it doesn't all turn out bad.
Yeah. You know what? Literally was not planning this, but when it came out and you started telling it, it clicked. Isn't that because my sister runs your mini storage
Yes, she
unit
does.
down in St. Pete? She's been doing it for 15 years, maybe
Make
more.
it 25.
25. Well, let's see. I just hit my 20-year high school reunion. Yeah, I guess gotta be close to around there. But didn't she get brought on because my mom discovered the lady that was running it was stealing something?
That's
And then you needed somebody to help, and she's like, well, let me see what my daughter's doing, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Oh, my God. Honestly, I didn't even think about that until I started telling
Yeah.
that story.
Yep.
Jeez.
Yep. And by the way, she's doing a good job.
Yeah. She's got to be close to retiring by now, right?
No, she can't retire. I don't know enough about that business to let her retire.
Oh, my God. How about the freaking drug ring that just got taken down?
Oh.
In your, I don't know if this was recent or if this was years ago, the last time I'd seen.
December 5th of 2023. I won't forget it.
What happened with that?
Well, I'll tell you in order I found out. Okay. Hey, boss, there's a bunch of cops on the plaza parking lot. I said, cops? Yeah. Well, what's going on? He says, they're raiding the place. I said, no. He said, yeah, they are. I said, okay. I guess I better get on down there. Get down there. And he wasn't kidding. There were cops everywhere. At least 25 cars. And this thing that looked like a tank on wheels. And they ran over the water line that feeds the whole plaza and broke that. They had already done it. Tore the doors out of 2 of the units, and apparently one of the guys ran, and they were chasing him in northeast St. Pete, and he was running 100 mile an hour on a side street in a residential area, hit one of those bumps that they have, went airborne, and crashed into a house. And come to find out, this is something they've been working on for 3 years. And they had come to me and said, we think there's drug activity in this complex. Do you know anything about it? I said, well, no, but I wouldn't know. I'm kind of naive. And he says, do you mind if we put a camera up? And I said, no, go ahead. Anywhere you want. And I said, I can make life a little easier. I'll give you access to the ones that I have. And but they put theirs up anyway. And that was, for crying out loud, in August. Never heard anything more till December 5th. But turns out that this was a major deal.
Yeah.
It wasn't the only business. There were 26 others.
I was going to say, it was like a huge number, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And so one of my ones that they busted was a tattoo shop, which didn't surprise me too much. But the other one was a recording studio. And that did surprise me because there was a lot of expensive equipment in there. And the guy was a fairly young guy, way overweight. So didn't think too much about it. There's a little side story here, and I don't know if this part is true. My maintenance guy says, yeah, they shot a mannequin. I said, what do you mean they shot a mannequin? He said, didn't he put his hands up? and I said, but never saw any mannequins until 3 months later, and a mannequin showed up in the dumpster. But I don't know if it's the same mannequin. I don't even know if that's a true story. But this is my maintenance guy. He didn't have a tendency to lie. He was just very serious about everything. But they did a lot of damage. The police did. I found out just one of those commercial doors is $10,000.
Oof.
And so they did a lot of damage to the complex. But we fixed it all up, and I've got nice people, and I'm in there now. And like I said, the only one that made me suspicious was the tattoo place. But it was I think the tattoo place drug the other guy in because they were right next door. But they hit 26 other places that same day.
Yeah, it was like simultaneously, right?
Yeah, and they recovered enough. They recovered $104,000.
None of that went back to fixing your door?
No, and it wasn't in mine. And they found enough 25 kilos of cocaine and 6.5 fentanyl. So it was a big deal. It was all over the news. Yeah, it was good advertising.
I bet.
But the place is full now, and the owner of the place is maybe a little more careful. Of who he lets in as
renting out.
Yeah.
Well, Ray, my wife has even texted me, let that poor guy go home already. It's almost 10 o'clock, sir. We would have probably done this earlier and been a little bit easier if it wasn't for the weird audio issue I was having. But I'm glad we did this, sir.
Well, I don't know if it's entertaining anybody, but
Your wife's having a good time?
Well, on a personal level, she's a great wife. And let me do my thing. And I attribute at least 50% of the success I've had or lack thereof to her. But she's a super positive person in my life, and
she telling you?
Tell me to stop it. I'm sure there's a lot of other people who can understand that with the right helpmate, there's a piece in your life that you didn't even know was there.
It's weird. Something odd that stuck with me around the same time frame of getting to know you is probably there was the teachers will put these things in the inspirational things or lists or whatever on the walls of the classrooms. So one of the things that stuck with me is like rules to success. Rule number 1, marry the right person.
That's probably true.
And that stuck with me really hard. And even like you were kind of saying some nice things about her, and she was like, stop it. And I hate when people do it to me, even Charlie earlier. Like, you didn't grow up to be so much of a shithead. And I didn't like that, But for you as well, like I started the show with, you said this about the 2 boys equal no man, like you've told me things, you said things to me that really stuck with me, that helped me when I went to the dealership side of things. So I wanted to thank you for that personally. And I would probably do the same thing with my dad, but No, we don't do that. We're not a hugging family. We don't talk positively. So that's the closest he's going to get out of it. But for you, sir, you're a big inspiration for what I wanted to do in the motorcycle industry. And you've been a big part in so many people's lives down in Florida and probably all over the country, especially when you're talking about the top 20 group. So,
Yeah, that was a good thing to be in. I wish I should have done it earlier.
yeah.
There is a side note on that too. First meeting I went to was in Denver.
Mm-hmm.
They hurt my feelings so bad I didn't come back for 2 years.
Just because you were like, I'm not doing the right things, or they just said some things that upset you?
No, I said, I can't be this stupid, but I was.
Live and learn, right?
Thankfully, I did. Yes.
Well,
That's true.
well, usually I wrap up the show with like a quick little story from my kid, and I do this outro, but that ain't working. So we're just gonna cut this off whenever, unless you got any other stories to tell. Or Miss June, you got any other things that he should talk about?
Well, anybody that's listened has had anything to do in my life, thank you for being there. Don't have. I'm at the time in my life I do not need a 10-year warranty on that color TV.
All right. Well, thanks for watching. We're going to be live at Dade City on Thursday night, as long as they have good internet signal. And hopefully I'll have these weird internet issues solved on my end. So we'll talk to you then.